Good morning, and welcome to the Landmarks Preservation Commission's public meeting and public hearing of March 17th, 2026. We're going to begin by taking attendance, and I'm going to ask our legal counsel, Mark Silberman, to call the roll.
Vice Chair Master,
Here.
Commissioner Chen, Commissioner Chu. Commissioner Chu, has he joined remotely yet? No. Commissioner Ginsburg?
Here.
Commissioner Goldblum? Commissioner Quembe?
Here.
Commissioner Jefferson? Commissioner Mann?
Here.
Commissioner Wilder?
Here.
This meeting is being held in our hearing room at 253 Broadway on the second floor. It is also being held via Zoom and live streamed on YouTube for anyone who would like to participate remotely. We're going to begin with a public hearing agenda for new applications on our designated properties, and then we're going to have a public meeting agenda for items which have already had a public hearing. Now I'd like to turn it over to our Director of Preservation, Corey Harala.
Thank you, Vice Chair Master, and good morning, everyone. We'll start today's Preservation Department public hearing agenda with item number 1. That's LPC 26-06474, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 2558, Lot 14, 102 Kent Street in the Greenpoint Historic District. This is an altered neo-Greek style row house designed by George A. Kingsland and built circa 1873. And the application is to construct a stoop and parlor entrance.
Okay, Commissioners, the applicant has entered the hearing via Zoom. Geeta, you now have control of the presentation. You just need to click on your screen. And then you can advance the slides using your arrow keys or your mouse. Please state your name for the record and you may begin. Geeta, you'll need to unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you may begin.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Can you please click on your screen again? Great, now you can advance the slides. Please state your name for the record.
Okay. My name is Geeta Nandan. Thank you, Commissioners, for taking the time this morning to hear about the project located at 102 Kent Street. It is a row house located within the Greenpoint Historic District, constructed in 1873 by George A. Kingsland, a local builder who also was responsible for several other brownstones in the neighborhood. As you can see here from the 1940s tax photos, the building did at one point feature a raised stoop with a parlor level entry, elements that have since been removed. I'm the architect representing the owner who wishes to restore it back to its original sort of state with the stoop and the parlor level entrance. Oops, sorry. The building sits within the cohesive context of the Greenpoint Historic District. Kent Street has a pretty strong pattern of stooped row houses with elevated entrances. And the nearby properties, 144 and 146 Kent Street, were also built by Kingsland and sort of represent this typology. So restoration of 102 Kent Street would help create a more cohesive streetscape and allow the building to fit in. As you can see here, the other adjacent properties in the neighborhood, 139 Noble Street, is one of our precedent projects that we've been looking at in terms of features for the stoop, the enfrainment, and the door details. So the existing ground level entry that you can see here, we're proposing to redesign that to bring it back to its original sort of typology with a ground floor entrance under the stoop and the parlor level entrance to be brought back to its original scope. You can see here double doors made of wood and then a enfrainment with a cast iron railing system. The stoop design includes cast in place concrete construction with a brownstone-like finish for the treads and risers and sidewalls, consistent of a typical brownstone stoop. The iron work and railings with new knoll posts will match the adjacent properties. 194, so that way we can maintain continuity across the block as well. Here you can see from the interior how the existing vestibule, which is still intact and shows what the original vestibule used to look like. The interior stairs will remain exactly as is, and we'll be able to bring the interior vestibule back to its original state by adding in the new stoop. Here you can see some of the more sort of specific details. The cast concrete enfrainment will then have the brownstone finish, and we will match the color of the existing facade as closely as possible. And the doorway will be a wood doorway system with a double door entrance. And thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Commissioner Ginsburg?
Do you have any specific documentation of what the stoop on this building looked like when it was here? Because I
No,
realized
there's
that
no
okay.
photographic. There's
Thank
no
you.
photographic evidence of its original state, but in long conversations with at staff level and others, it's pretty common. These stoops were removed when they were maybe a commercial entity entered or others, and so. But by looking at the stoop configuration or the interior configuration of the building, there was very clearly a vestibule on that second floor.
Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? Commissioner Wilder?
Is there a height difference between the adjacent stoop top landing and the one you're proposing? It looks like your floor, your parlor floor is much higher than the adjacent building, or am I looking at that incorrectly?
You mean compared to the adjacent buildings?
Yes.
Well, there's Kent Street has is not a level street, so the buildings themselves have different elevations. So yes, our parlor floor is slightly higher than the one to the west and slightly higher than the one to the east as well.
Any other questions? Okay, let's see if we have anybody in the room who would like to speak on this item. Noting that there isn't, let me turn it over to Stephen Thompson to see if we have any remote testimony.
Those joining remotely who wish to speak, please raise your hand, after which you'll be promoted to panelist. We ask you to unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. The first speaker is Christina Conroy.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society, New York. Now, we largely support this proposal to reconstruct a stoop and parlor entrance on this 19th century row house. The nearby stoops at 144 and 146 Kent Street, which were constructed by the same builder, give a good sense of how the original stoop and entrance would have looked at 102 Kent Street. The proportions, materials, and ironwork are all in keeping with the neighboring buildings from the same period. Our only concern is that this project is the lack of detail on the proposed facade. Since the upper floors have window cornices and sills, we suggest adding these features to the windows on the first and second floors. Without them, the windows look too small for the space, creating an odd balance. Additional masonry, detailing, defining the window openings, and separating the basement from the parlor floor would help immensely and would be in keeping with the neighboring buildings. Thank you, Commissioners.
Anyone else wishing to speak, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I'll note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 1 recommends approval. Historic Districts Council submitted testimony citing concerns for the accuracy of the drawings and urges the commission to reconvene once the details are confirmed.
Okay, thank you. Would the applicant like to respond to the comments?
Sure. I mean, we were not planning on doing much else to the rest of the facade, partly expense reasons, and the rest of the facade is in very good condition. We would certainly consider it if required, but right now the stoop and the enfrainment are our main focus.
Thank you. Commissioners, any final questions? Okay, let's go ahead and close the hearing. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Mahan, would you second that?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. I just want to note that Commissioner Chu is participating remotely today. Commissioner Ikumbe, would you like to start this discussion?
Sure. Overall, I'd like to applaud the applicant for trying to bring this this brownstone back to its original state. In saying though, I see the difficulties in finding documentation for the existing facade, and I would say based off of the precedent that was used, which I believe is 139 Noble Street. I'd say if that's what you're using for your basis, I'd say study it a little more just to refine the detailing of the stoop and also the front portico. I believe that can be done with staff, and I can find it appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilder?
Yeah, I think overall I can also find it appropriate. I would say that the height of the stoop it's feels a little off in terms of the distance to the property line and how many risers and stairs. So I don't know if that was clearly articulated in the presentation, but I think they can work with staff to make sure that that aligns with the actual building. But overall, I find appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg?
In general, it's appropriate and they should work with staff to refine the details.
Thank you. Commissioner Mahan?
I concur with Commissioner Ginsburg.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen?
Same here.
Commissioner Goldblum? Commissioner Jefferson? Okay, thank you. Oh, Commissioner Chu?
I agree with my fellow commissioners.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Ikumbe, would you like to read the motion, including the comments that you had, working with staff to refine details and proportions of the stoop and the enfrainment?
Yes. In the matter of LPC 26-06474, 102 Kent Street, Greenpoint Historic District, an altered neo-Gret style row house built circa 1873. This application is to reconstruct a stoop and parlor entrance. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Greenpoint Historic District. I also note that the building features nearly identical architectural elements at the upper floors to those found at 139 Noble Street, a traditional Italianate neo-Gret style row house that was also built circa 1873 and attributed to George A. Kingsland. I recommend approval, noting that the alterations to the basement and parlor floors do not constitute a cohesive design of the entire facade. Therefore, the proposed alteration will not eliminate a significant later alteration, and the reintroduction of a stoop and parlor floor entrance will bring the facade closer to its historic appearance. That the reconstructed stoop and the parlor entrance will be in keeping with other row houses found in the streetscape and throughout the historic district. And the design of the stoop and the door enframement is inspired by that of 139 Noble Street, a row house likely designed and built by the same architect in the same year. That the proposed slope of the stoop and height of the entrance enframement are influenced by the constraints of the property line varying from the original proportions. That the proposed material of the entrance enframement consisting of brownstone tinted cementitious stucco over concrete will match the existing brownstone tinted cementitious stucco finish at the lower portion of the facade. That the proposed design of the stoop ironwork is in keeping with ironwork historically found at buildings of this style and age in the historic district, and that the proposed work will not detract from the special architecture or historic character of the building or the Greenpoint Historic District. However, I note that the proposed design and proportions of the stoop and parlor entrance could potentially better match the historic prototype at 139 Noble Street. Therefore, I recommend that the details and dimensions of the stoop and parlor entrance be restudied to match the historic prototype as closely as feasible in consultation with staff.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilder, would you second that?
Second.
Thank you. And Mark, will you call the vote?
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu. Commissioner Chu. Stepped away. Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Quembe,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilder.
Aye.
With 8 in favor and 1 abstained, or 1.
Aye.
None opposed. There's Stephen.
I'm sorry, I
Nine in
couldn't
favor.
find the audio button. Sorry.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Stephen. With 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
Okay, thank you. That's been approved with modifications. Please continue to work with staff. Let's move to the next item.
Thank you.
Right, next item is public hearing item number 2, LPC 26-05099, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 234, Lot 17, 183 Columbia Heights in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. This is a Beaux-Arts-style apartment house built circa 1920, and the application is to establish a master plan governing the future installation of windows.
Good morning, Commissioners. Michelle Crarin, Deputy Director of Preservation. This item before you today is for 183 Columbia Heights, located in the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. The building is located mid-block on the east side of Columbia Heights near Pierpont Street. I'm going to walk you through the details of the proposal, which is to establish a master plan governing the future installation of windows. This application is before you due to a change in the configuration of the proposed configuration of the 3 windows at the first floor. In the 1940s tax photo on the left, you can see the historic configuration at the first floor, which consisted of 1/1 windows below a single light transom. However, by the time of designation, as shown in the center photo, the historic windows were removed and replaced with 6/1 double hung windows with no transom above. And on the photo on the right, you can see that the windows at the floors above That and at the first floor were all 6/1 windows. The windows at the floors above will be reviewed at the staff level. We are just reviewing the ones at the first floor. So here in the center photo on this slide is a close-up of the typical first floor window, which is currently 6/6 double hung with curved corners at the upper sash. The proposed window will be 1/1 double hung, matching the historic configuration at the floors above, also with curved corners at the upper sash shown on the left. And here are the proposed details. The windows will be all wood, 1/1. And the proposed plan section details. And that is the proposal before you today. The applicant is here and can answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Commissioner Ginsburg?
The existing windows seem to be from that insulated glass in fairly good shape. Why are they proposing replacement?
So the existing windows were actually installed in the 1980s, late 1980s. So they were approved by the commission in November of 1988. So coming on 40 years at this point.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, let's see if we have anybody in the room who would like to speak on this item. Noting that there isn't, let me turn it over to Stephen Thompson to see if we have any remote testimony.
Those joining via Zoom who wish to speak, please raise your hand. Our first speaker will be Judy Stanton.
Judy Stanton, speaking for the Brooklyn Heights Association. We support this application. This apartment building was put up in 1899 by Louis J. Horowitz and designed by Frederick Jacobson, architect Frederick Jacobson. It was noted at the time as Brooklyn's tallest elevator building, featuring full floor-through units. Historical photographs of the building, both in the presentation and elsewhere, show that the front facade windows have been altered several times before designation. We support the master plan as proposed by the applicant. We agree that even if the window color was determined to originally have been white or beige, it is unlikely in this small condominium that a new color scheme would be applied across the entire facade anytime soon through window placements and other units. It is more appropriate to leave the windows uniformly black than adopt a master plan that introduces color variation. On the other hand, a change in configuration, even if gradual and not uniform across the facade, will be less noticeable and is therefore appropriate in the plan. Thank you.
Anyone else joining via Zoom who wishes to speak, please raise your hand. Right, seeing none, I'll note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board, Brooklyn Community Board 2 recommends approval, and the Historic Districts Council submitted testimony recommending restoration of the transoms to better reflect the historic fabric.
Did you want to respond to any of the comments? Okay, thanks. Commissioners, any final questions? Okay, let's go ahead and close the hearing. Commissioner Wilder, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Commissioner Kumbe, would you second that? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you like to start this discussion?
Yes. Hold on a second. Let me get to the. With regards to LPC.
To the discussion, perhaps?
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Oh. Got ahead of myself. I'm not awake yet. This seems reasonable. I really appreciate a master plan. It's always better for buildings to work that way and appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Mahan?
Concur.
Commissioner Chen?
Same here.
Commissioner Goldblum? Does anybody have any other opinions? Okay. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you like to read the
Now we
motion?
could do it. With regards to LPC 26-05099, 2083 Columbia Street, Brooklyn Heights Historic District. A Beaux-Arts-style apartment house built circa 1920. Application is to establish a master plan governing the future installation of windows. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Brooklyn Heights Historic District. I also note that the original windows throughout the building appear to have been 1/1 in configuration, except at the first floor where they were 1/1 double hung with transoms above, and that these were replaced with 6/1 double hung windows prior to designation of the historic district, and again pursuant to LPC permit. Finally, I note that the application for a master plan to replace all front facade windows with 1/1 wood windows is currently under review by staff. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the existing brick mold will be retained and repaired as needed, that the proposed replacement sash at the first floor will match the historic upper floor windows to be changed over time under pending master plan in terms of detail, configuration, operation, and materials, and the work will not detract from the special architectural or historic character of the building or the Brooklyn Heights Historic District.
Thank you. Commissioner Mahan, would you second that?
Second.
Thank you. And Mark, will you call the vote?
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Equembe,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilder.
Aye.
With 9 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
That's been approved. Let's move to the next item.
All right, and we're now going to move to our public meeting agenda for 3 items, and we'll return to the public hearing agenda after that. So starting with public meeting item number 1, that's LPC 26-03280, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 2111, Lot 45, 138 to 154 St. Felix Street, aka 11 to 21 Hanson Place in the Brooklyn Academy of Music Historic District. This is a neo-Gothic style church built and designed by Halsey, McCormick, and Helmer and built in 1929 to 30. The application is to alter and demolish portions of the building, remove, replace, and relocate doors and stained glass windows, and construct a tower. This was last presented at the public meeting of February 10th, 2026, and no action was taken at that time. The applicants have returned with revisions to the proposal in response to your comments, and we'll go through those for us after we open the proceedings.
Okay. Commissioner Goldblum, would you make a motion to open the proceedings?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that?
No second.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the hearings are open. Proceedings are open.
Great. Good morning, Commissioners. Dan Kaplan, Senior Partner, FX Collaborative Architects. I'm here with Bill Chalkley from my office and Drew Hartley from ADP Architects. I just want, the arrows or what's that? Okay, great, thank you. Let me just time myself here, so make sure I'm gonna stay within our time. So we appreciate the input from the last 2 meetings and hearings, and it was thoughtful, insightful, and we really, I hope you agree, took it to heart. And we have a revised response and designed to share with you this morning. I want to first introduce the major things of what we heard, talk about the massing changes that we've made, which I think have been significant, and also some of the details that we have developed. So what we heard is that we need to strengthen the enlargement's relationship to the church, specifically its symmetries and its intrinsic geometries and language. Second, we need to reduce the height to 285, the datum, the shoulders of 1 Hanson Place. Third, we need to really incorporate the north facade and the north roof termination gable of the building, of the existing church into the design so that the church building reads with more integrity. And finally, we need to look very carefully at the transition between new and old. So this is what we've done. And you'll see this in a moment, we've reworked the massing to really respond to the church's symmetries. There has been a lot of conversation about how symmetrical, how asymmetrical, and I think we've really clarified that. We've made some more direct relationships with the architecture of the church and related the fenestration more directly to the church. We've also reduced the height clearly below to the less than half goes to the, or about half goes to the full 285, and then it steps back down significantly. And then third is we've really have reintroduced and reincorporated the north gable, including preserving the rose window. And finally, we've looked carefully at the transition and have a scheme to show you. So first, we went back to basics, looked at the geometry of the church. It has a very strong, of course, north-south axis, which is left to right, which is the nave, and then there's a secondary counter axis. On the left is the south end of the nave, which is very strong, and then it goes all the way through to the rose window and the north gable. And then on the St. Felix side, there are 4 bays and 3 piers, and that has a secondary symmetry. So in addition, there's a very strong roof architecture here. The blue is a gable that stretches along the nave. Then there's at the first setback of the church, at the street setback, there's some transition roofs, and then there's also this gray zinc lead ornamented railing or parapet detail that we are picking up on in our building. So what we've done is, first move was to make a 3-bay volume that stretches left to right, north to south, that relates very directly to the end of the nave on on Hanson, and on the gable to the north. We've continued our feathering approach, or stepping back approach, but made it symmetrical and relate directly to the piers of the St. Felix side. And then finally, I think the biggest change too is to create the prominence of these 3 bays here. We've stepped this back in 2 bays and 1 bays that also relate to the piers, but pull back so that this center volume is most prominent. So the plan reads something like this. What that does is create a significant setback from Hanson Place, a little over 30 feet, 28 feet, and 24 feet, so that there's this tiering back. And then, of course, the feathering that we have been showing, or the stepping back going to 130 St. Felix and also to to Hanson Place, remain intact. So this is the existing condition. This is where we were initially. This is where we were last time we saw you. I'm just going to abstract those. This is where we were initially at 328, and with asymmetrical approach, this is the reduction from February, and this is where we are with our proposal. Just going to go around. We've eliminated the cascade. We've pulled back the building back from the north. We've created a symmetrical stepping here that balances north and south. We've reduced the height of the building to the one Hanson Place shoulder, and significantly that's in the mid-block, and you'll see in some of the perspectives that it really reads lower because we are stepping down 1 story and 4 more stories. On the Hanson side, the building is at 285, then 270. There's a 4-story reveal gap between the upper part of the building and 1 Hanson. And then here is that 3-bay volume that steps back towards 1 Hanson, also revealing a significant part of the nave, which has a blind window, which I'll show you. So here is the colored elevation. Now the same thing in 3D. I think this was our most asymmetrical version. And then it came back to with a little more toned down version where we got rid of the cascade. And then now we are clearly on the right in, something that really grows out, relates much more directly and fundamentally to the church. Just one thing here. Other thing is that as we develop this form, we looked to One Hanson and noted that there are these relationships and transitions of scale down and with the street wall. This is then the left is existing and right is proposed with the new profile and the pulling back from Hanson. So Hanson Place. So, and this shows the evolution with clearly the one on the right showing the most revealing of the tower of One Hanson Place. And I'll show you some other views in a moment. So this is Barclays looking north, the 4-story gap. That is at 285, but because it's set back further from the intersection, it reads lower in perspective. So clearly secondary to One Hanson. And this shows the evolution. I think Atlantic and 4th looking northeast is the current. It's clearly lower. This still has prominence. I will show you more details of that. And then this shows the evolution from left to right of the 3 proposals. Ashland and Fulton looking south. Without 130 St. Felix, the building's pulled away. It's reduced. This is the shoulder of 130 St. Felix, and then this is, of One Hanson, and then this is with 130 St. Felix in place. More germane, I think, is this view, Lafayette and Fort Greene at Fowler Place. Left is today, right is proposed with the approved 130 St. Felix and the 144 proposal, so that there is still this fissure, this view of One Hanson coming down. And here it shows the evolution. And again, I think the height reduction and the sort of symmetrical shoulders show that this building, along with 130, is clearly secondary to the main tower of One Hanson. St. Felix looking south. The evolution. And now I just want to talk about the north wall a little bit before I get into the details of the building. I think always seen as a lot line condition. It's a mixed bag of a return of face brick, a ghosting of the building that was there, some painted brick, some cast stone, the rose window, two slot windows, a recess, and the gable end. It's a mix, as I said, a mixed bag of cast stone, face brick, painted brick. And our proposal last time was to really bring the tower architecture down, and the suggestion, which we've embraced, was to really push the tower back. In this case, we're rebuilding the gable roof, recreating the architectural effect. We're returning the face brick and some of the cast stone, pulling that across 2 windows, 2 slot windows, and the rose window and the gable. So this is a street view. Left is current condition with 130 St. Felix approved design in place, and the right is proposed. Between 130 and the proposed condition, this north wall will be exposed, hopefully for a very long time. So we thought it was appropriate to complete it, to make it read as a volume. And this is up from a stoop across the street. And you can see, the recess, the rose windows, some of the trim, the 2 windows, and then the tower setback. We'll get into the transition in a moment. Okay. Now I'm going to go just to some of the architectural details. So here is the view from Hanson and Fort Greene looking west. The church structure the tower. And really, the composition is 6 clear bays that pick up on the church. There's a feathering, a stepping back of those vertical piers into the shaft, and then a little bit more at the top. And there's, of course, there's a tiering this way, and there's a transition, which is both piers and a recess. We've picked up very directly on we've looked very carefully, I should say, at the architecture of the church building. There's a series of these buttresses that step back, that have a cast stone or limestone transition. There are these wonderful pleating corners, which we've picked up on, and these paired cast stone limestone elements between the windows and the tracery as well. So in sort of Barty sketch, the piers come up, they evolve up to the building. We've recessed 2 stories here, and we've also started to push back at the top so that there's a really basement on top type of approach. There was a suggestion last time about a gasket, which I thought was very wise. So this is where we were, the idea of the gasket, and then we looked at a both and solution, which is the buttresses and the gasket. And this is how it is in the proposal. So here are the existing piers. The building sets back. There's some tiering here as well. And then at the very top, and then this is a 2-story recess. The materiality of that recess changes. So it's all cast stone in here. This relates to the location, geometry, and profile of the tracery of the stained glass. And the secondaries relate to these pairings of these windows. I think this is, let me just go back one. There's that metal, cast metal, formed metal existing detail. We've picked up on that in a railing detail up above. I think this view shows it the best, show the intent. So there's a tiering of these piers, a setback, allowing for this transition, and some sort of sense that this is lifted up and there's a gasket between the two structures, but that the vertical piers come down. You can see some of the corner stepping, the resolution of the roof line, and then the railing detail, which is a metal rail with perforations to pick up on the texture of the historic detail down below. In elevation, some of the details. This is at the recess. The highlight here is the railing, the piers themselves having a similar profile as the tracery down below. And then as we get into the top, we've adapted a similar strategy with a subtle stepping and setting back of the planes of the building so that it has a subtle termination and starts to expose at the corners some of those corner steps that pick up on the geometry and the vocabulary of the church building itself. Some of the details of the typical wall. The south, which I think has been one of the areas of I think most ambiguity and consternation, and I think this is, resolves it. And the greatest change to the proposal, we have created 3 clear bays and in a volume that is the proudest in the new enlargement. Those 3 bays relate to the tracery and the tripartite stained window at the church. And then the volumes progressively step back 2 bays, 1 bay further back from Hanson. And basically that's 24 feet, 28 feet, and 30 feet back from the street line. What that does is really allows for the centerpiece to have a very strong relationship with the church. So this is the evolution. And again, I think this is really some of the areas that the the commission had the most comments on and insights, and the more asymmetrical approach, and then really coming back and really making this thing very directly related to the church geometry and volume, and just some of the ways we've resolved that. First, this is a dead-on sort of perspective elevation, and one of the things that I think is great about this church is I've been talking about these folds and corners, and there's like 3 volumes that go back, with the third volume really returning back that the majority of that 28 feet. And so you can see that here, 1, 2, 3, with this returning back to 28 feet, so that you really get the full return of the nave with a blind window. And this, I think, sequence shows the resolution. This is the current with 1, 2, 3 going back with the blind window, and this is 1, 2, 3 with the blind window. This volume, this cascade here, locking in with the geometry of the new enlargement, and these piers 1, 2, 3 relating 1, 2, 3 to the church below. And this is how it feels from the street. Again, this is 24, 28, and 30 feet back from the street. A few more things before I close. This is the corner view now. You could see the piers and the recess and the strong 3-bay center and the resolution. I just want to talk about this window and the window in the arcade. So this is which we've changed from the last proposal. This is the existing. This is where we were last time. So we propose to extend these 3 windows down. We propose to remove the religious iconography stained glass from this bay and extend it down. And we had an ornamentals trifoil here in this, replacing that blind window. And after reconsideration, opted for a more simple approach where we pick up on the circular windows and incorporate existing stained glass. And here in this final bay, really repeat the paired tall arches in the recess. So this is the final image or two. Again, I think the changes have really added up to create that the church has the most prominence, that the enlargement really takes its cues from the church, the geometry of the church, the axes of the church, and the vocabulary of the church, and that we've really sought to create both an enlargement that really works within this specific location, with this specific historic district, and the church building itself with its renovations and restorations that really bring it back to life. So with that, again, I want to thank the commission for your insight, and I look forward to any questions and comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum, did you have a question?
I did. What is the planar relationship between the new proposed building next door, whose number I forget, 180, and your building?
So good question. So this facade is 40 feet back. There's a transition at 20, and then it's 0. This is at 32, 30, and 28. So it steps. So it starts at 28 feet back and then steps back to 32.
Thank you.
So 8 feet difference. Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? I have a question.
Sure.
So I know that we had very strongly wanted to retain the rose window kind of where it is. Is that going to be visible from the street?
We looked at it. I would say it's very difficult to see it from the street. Maybe a glimpse here and there. I will say that certainly from the stoops, it will be visible. I'm just going back. And of course, from any apartments around and so forth.
And is that because we're keeping it exactly where it was before?
Yeah, we actually are making it slightly more visible. We're moving it approximately 5 feet to the north. We're moving it
Okay.
out so it's closer to the street line. I'm sorry.
And so to keep it there, is there any way to make it visible from the street? Just because it's such a shame. It's
Yeah.
such a beautiful feature.
Well, I don't. In terms of keeping it where I think it needs to be on the center axis of the church for its integrity. I think we can look at, moving it up in elevation in a way that makes it a little bit more visible. Again, I think the place where it's going to be the most visible is from the stoops. But, maybe a couple feet here would still feel natural and still feel like it could be like that way when we rebuild it without sort of getting mannered about the location. Yeah,
Thank you. I know that this is something we had requested, so I just,
yeah.
yeah.
I think it, from the stoops, from the apartments across the way I think it really signals, completion of the church and that it is a church. So
Right.
we definitely came around to it. And, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, and Commissioner Chu?
Yeah, I just had a question. Maybe it was just answered. Couldn't quite tell, but the facade on the proposed building, how does that relate to the neighboring, in this view, to the new development on the right in terms of its relationship on the south side?
Sure.
No, not the south side, sorry.
This side.
This
the north
side.
Yeah. So this, it's set back 6 feet from the lot line, the side lot line.
Okay, and then from the side facing, I guess I'm trying to understand the projection,
Got
the
it.
face yeah, to the left.
So what's the
How does that-
relationship between the north face of the tower, the north face of the gable?
No,
Is
I'm
that the
talking
question?
about the two towers.
Got it.
Both the
Got it.
new proposal on the right, the white rendered one, and your proposal on the left. What is their relationship
They're
to the street face?
So, from the street, and then the separation is approximately 30 feet.
Okay.
From the street, this is 0, -20, -40.
Okay.
From the street, this is 0, and this is -32.
Okay, so that's
from
about
that
8
corner
feet
to that
forward
corner,
from
it's
that.
about 8 feet.
Okay,
Sorry.
that was my question. Thank you.
Right. You're welcome.
Commissioners, any other questions? I have another question. I know that one of the comments that we had was to retain as much stained glass as possible. And that's something that I don't think you had discussed in this presentation. Are you making any additional efforts to retain more stained glass?
Drew Hartley from Atchison Doyle. So we did, clearly we're retaining the stained glass at the north, the rose window. We have studied several different options of retaining more glass in the main body of the building. The pieces that we did retain are the non-religious figures, and everything left is large figures of religious figures. So chopping those into pieces that were able to be put at spandrels or other places within those windows didn't really feel right and didn't feel true to this. So the culmination I think you saw previously was that we have made a unified facade. We have all the same circle windows at the top of those traceries. We think that is strong as a composition, but the pure addition of stained glass is the rose window on the north facade.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any final questions? Okay. Oh, Stephen, Commissioner Chu?
Sorry, that was from before. I'll lower that hand. Sorry. There you go.
Thank you, thank you. There was a lot of testimony that was shared with commissioners in advance of today's meeting, but I'm going to turn it over to Stephen Thompson to review some of the submitted testimony.
LPC received the following written comments and campaigns following the February 10th public meeting. Brooklyn Borough President Antonio Reynoso recommends approval. Owners of 1 Hanson Place recommend the east elevation feature an open space between the new building and 1 Hanson Place and a datum of 225 feet or lower as the primary contextual reference for height. The owner of neighboring 130 St. Felix submitted written comments recommending denial. According to an online petition campaign shared with LPC, 307 individuals recommend approval. We also received written comments from 43 individuals recommending denial and 2 individuals recommending approval.
And if I can just make sure that the record's straight, the folks from 1 Hanson Place, just to make a finer point, were clear that they thought that the tower was very, very much too big and should be smaller, and they were just pointing out that they felt that the response wasn't responsive and it should have been even shorter than the response. But they're very much opposed to the general approach here.
Thank you. So if there aren't any more questions, let's go ahead and start our discussion. Commissioner Mahan, maybe you can start. What I'm going to do is I actually have the notes from our last meeting, so I'm just going to review your comments from before. Commissioner Mahan, you were supportive previously. You were okay with the scale and massing at this corner site and okay with height above the datum. You wanted the north gable maintained to keep the volume integrity of the church in place. And you also wanted more historical material to be maintained, including non-religious stained glass like border. Do you have, what are your comments on the changes?
Sure. Thanks, Commissioner Master. All right, so there again, quite a complex project and lots to chew on. And I was struck at this meeting, honestly, by what a pleasure it has been to learn about and study this magnificent church over and over as the applicant has come back repeatedly, these spectacular corners that it has in particular, which were highlighted today. This has been a very public process with many thoughtful comments and responses on all sides, the applicant team, as well as, public testimony, which has been very much appreciated and, has affected our commentary, mine included. At the last public meeting, I outlined in some detail what I thought was a sort of rationale for appropriateness, beginning with the historic district, which is in and of itself varied in scale and height, with a significant marker at the corner in 1 Hanson Place, this block, which contains that marker, 1 Hanson Place, and its essential character is a lot line building having 2 lot lines, clearly, I think, designed as such. And then the church building itself being not only a corner building, but a typology, which I think can take and accept greater alteration and, more significant, overbuilds, as it is in this case, given the difficulty of adaptively reusing this building type. Just to get back to the public testimony a bit, there was some in this most recent sort of round of testimony commentary about One Hanson Place, and its nature as a building seen in the round versus a lot line building. Indeed, the clock is four-faced. As the building, sets back to sort of the tower, it begins to become, a building in the round. But I think up to the shoulder, certainly, and perhaps even beyond a bit, but up to the shoulder now that the building is, proposed building is capped at that datum, I think it is clearly designed as a kind of lot line building, despite, perhaps materials advertising its floors as having, abundant or uninterrupted light and air. I think its architecture, and contemporaneous sort of writing speaks to that. So as to the massing, what's before us, it's certainly much simplified. It has a much more direct relationship to the church. So I think that is positive. I think it's, I was okay with the height before, and the massing before. I, personally didn't need the sort of east-west profile to become symmetrical. I was okay with the, sort of perhaps more modernist balanced asymmetry, but I'm okay with this as well. I'm okay with it having more directly derived datums from One Hanson Place. I didn't think it necessarily needed to. It is, in my mind, more directly related to the church. One Hanson Place is its lot line neighbor, but I'm okay with it having these more directly derived datums. That's fine. I think the gasket is quite nice, quite kind of nuanced handling of materiality and detail. So I think that's really a lovely improvement and improves the relationship of the new architecture to the historic church architecture. And then it's, repeated again in a different way at the top. So the building has a kind of crown, a kind of subtle termination. I think that's quite nice as well. And it sounds like the rose window being retained is great, and it sounds like the colored glass has been studied, and everything that is non-religious is being retained. So I'm okay with that too. So I can find this project appropriate for those reasons.
Thank you. And Commissioner Ginsburg, you were supportive of this proposal the last time, and you commented that it was appropriate as designed. You were okay with the height and the massing.
And I just say, I think the applicant has listened to our comments and tried to address them, and I think has addressed them. I think this is a good balance between preserving enough of the church building and restoring it so that it is still there while generating the income in a reasonable way to be able to restore it and keep it. And so I think there's been a lot of thought put into this. Our comments have been addressed, and I can find this appropriate.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure that we're clear. I think that what the commissioner was saying was that we all recognize the difficulty of and the challenges to addressing the serious deterioration of the church. And I think that the idea of that this sort of asks for a higher degree of intervention. It's not a cost thing per se, because we weren't presented with cost information, but it's more a recognition, given what we know of the condition, that this is a building that, and the difficulty of reusing these kinds of facilities, that more intervention it may be necessary to ensure the future use of these.
Yeah, I appreciate council's clarification, and it clarifies what I said, and thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen, you had previously you had said that you wanted the height lowered and that you wanted the massing relocated to the rear or reorganized. You also had comments about the rose window questioned the asymmetrical massing. I think you would ask for stacking tower massing away from Hanson Place.
Yeah, similar to the commissioner's comment, I think the applicant has made much improvement. So for the people in the future looking at this record, we can say at least for sure that, you know, they went back to the basics. They scrapped the original assumption, which though, even though some of the commissioners members have no problem with it, I think now there's a very clear rationale and history and track record for the future generation to look at this and just say, I understand how they derive at this form, which is very respectful of the base, which I like that a lot, because the whole idea is the preservation of this gorgeous church. And to the degree that we have them push back, cut off the unnecessary corners, and then have a very clear, respectful, modular datum and the language, the vocabulary, the vernacular vocabulary of the existing church, which is, as the council noted, is in very bad shape. And I hope that this is and I also am appreciative that they lower the massing. I understand how difficult it is and how costly, but obviously it's not our domain here. But the fact that they're willing to listen, I understand the rose window. We are DVC would prefer it to be much more visible, but given that next door neighbor has already built to that degree, as to the crown at the top, I think that you know, I think the one area that they could still work on is obviously the language of the extrusion going up. There is the ability to still to break it up into, you know, midsection, the shaft, and then the crown, as Commissioner Mann mentioned. I think that if additional articulation can be made to make it, especially if it's based on the language of the church, but I can find that appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilder, you had previously said that you wanted the height lowered, the north gable maintained. You wanted more non-religious stained glass elements kept. And you were okay with the setbacks and the massing, but on the fence about the overall height.
Yeah. Kind of agree with most of the comments previously made. I do want to commend the applicant for taking the feedback and applying it. I think it to the point made earlier, I think they kind of went back to the drawing board per se and really focused on delivering a project that was able to highlight the church, which I think was one of the main priorities, at least for me. And I think they've successfully done that. I think I'm okay. I am okay with the reduction of the overall height, as well as the alignment of the bays of with the 6 kind of separate towers of the building. The rose window, I think even though we can't really see it, it does still have some sort of presence, even if it's not seen from the street. I think it still will have a positive impact, again, with overall the church. And like Commissioner Mann said, I think the gasket detail was pretty nice with how they were able to work that out and create that setback from the face of the church. So yeah, so overall, I can find it appropriate.
Thank you. And Commissioner Chu, you had wanted the height lowered, and you wanted a stronger reference to the datum at 1 Hanson Place. You wanted more historical material retained, specifically the north gable to be retained for the wholeness of the church volume. You were okay on the rhythm and the proportion. And you wanted a transitional space between the podium and the tower. And you suggested an architectural gasket.
Thanks, Angie. Yeah, I think that I'm going to just comment on various different topics. First of all, I do appreciate this process. I think if we look at the applicant's initial proposal and where we are today, there's been a very different attitude towards the presence of the proposed addition. I think that I appreciate the amount of existing church that is now being retained, as much as we would all love to see that church operating and functionally as its original design and construction was intended. I do think that being able to accommodate new construction to support housing and the growth of the city, we have to look at these types of changes to our historic fabric and districts. I really do appreciate, however, how much the community and the district cherishes the presence of the church, and I do think that the proposal retains the physical presence and the significance and character that the church has to the district and the sense of streetscape and human scale. So in some ways, I kind of look at this from the streetscape vantage point as well as the tower in the larger scale city effect. I think that the revisions have improved the initial concept, both in terms of the overall massing approach as well as the facade articulation. The reduction of the mass, I think, has benefited the proposal. The height reduction, I feel much better about. I think overall, what this proposal now is presenting is a more sensitive approach to how this new construction will sit as a piece on the block with historic Hanson Place as the centerpiece and most visible vertical landmark here. When I stand at this corner, the existing condition essentially is the great presence of the church at streetscape and then the towering presence of one Hanson as a dominant landmark. And I think that this current proposal retains that essential need. The design and articulation of the facade, I appreciate the move for that gasket. I do think that helps. It helps the overall reading and a sense of respect to the church below. I also appreciate the stronger articulation of the buttressing, which recalls itself from the church and carries that up so that there feels like there's a vertical relationship. The centering approach, I also think was an improvement, especially when I look at the view. I think it's the south view where I see the tower presence more centered on the central axis of the church. Ultimately, it feels to me like these moves have helped make the proposed building a more appropriate companion to the landmark condition that it sits in. From a larger perspective, looking at the towers, one Hanson does remain the dominant landmark. The view from, I guess it was the west. The one from the east view. Sorry, the east view, I think centers the proposed tower so that it feels like it's respecting the centered nature of one Hanson Place behind. All in all, I think this is much improved, and I also appreciate retaining the north nave and the stained glass window in the fabric of the church. I realize that the views of it are glimpses at times, but I do think that's important that even elements that may not be fully in view are essential pieces to the historic fabric. Ultimately, I can find this proposal appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Kumbe, previously you had also asked that the height of the tower be reduced, and you were concerned about the symmetry of the tower of the new construction, and you wanted, I think, the massing decreased northward along St. Felix. And I think those were your major comments.
Overall, I'd like to thank the applicant for actually listening to our comments. I guess in particular, not only has the applicant preserved the landmark, they've actually embraced it with this iteration, allowing it to sing and to live in the space that it has been for so long. It's difficult to more or less kind of merge two building types, a church and a tower. But I think while embracing the church itself and kind of deconstructing it from what it actually is and actually just studying the parts of the church, the applicant was able to more or less pick a language and ideals from it in which it could now be incorporated into the tower. And because of that, the tower more naturally relates to the church itself. So they work more cohesively. In doing so, I appreciate the transition piece between the two. So now it feels as if the tower is sprouting outside of the church instead of just being on top of it. I also appreciate the sculpting of the massing, actually not to overpower its neighbor. And I appreciate the lowering of the floors that are next to 1 Hanson, which actually is more just it doesn't have to be, but it's an homage of respect to the existing tower. So I appreciate that as well. For the east-west facade, I like it. It works well with what is there, but I would allow a little asymmetry on that side, because I do believe that there are strong ordering lines that have already been established. So there could be some room for play, but overall, I find it appropriate.
Thank you. And Commissioner Jefferson, you had wanted the height reduced to the shoulder of 1 Hanson Place. You also had asked for a gasket or transitional space between the church and the tower. You wanted more stained glass to be retained. And you liked certain aspects of the rhythm, and you could support shifting the massing back to make it subservient to 1 Hanson Place.
I read somewhere that the concept of this project was church facade preservation plus a tower. And I think that idea has been carried through completely. And I want to step back and go back to the beginning where we started with the towers. The landmark towers and the two lower towers create a composition. The landmark tower is dominant, and the other two towers, different in scale and materiality, are subordinates to the landmark building. Additional elements, the transition from the church to the tower is well thought through. And with, the transition is just very well done. The architectural thinking through the project is masterful. And I realize, looking at it now, I agree with all the comments from my fellow commissioners, that Hanson Place, they have done here is have an asymmetrical tower element, composition, and the church is symmetrical. And they've been able to make a composition, kind of a modern composition of asymmetry and symmetry that's really quite powerful. I mean, if you look at it from the image from Hanson Place, a facade, if you could put that on.
Want me to? Okay.
the facade that shows
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in elevation.
That one? From Hanson, from
Right,
Hanson.
good, looking directly at the.
Looking directly on it, sorry, one more. Oh,
Where is it?
yeah, I know where it is. Hang on. It's,
A straight on facade.
yeah, there we go. That,
One, you see, I mean, there's another one, but the church becomes kind of, in this asymmetrical composition, its symmetry becomes dominant at the corner. So it's really quite lovely.
Thank you.
I,
Oh, go ahead.
I support this.
Thank you. And Commissioner Goldblum, there were things that you liked and disliked about the proposal. You felt that 130 St. Felix Street worked because the volumes fit well within their context, and that you thought that 144 Felix didn't fit as well. You wanted the massing pulled back from St. Felix, and you wanted the height lowered. You also wanted to transition between the church and the tower, and you wanted the north gable maintained volumetrically. You also questioned the relationship of One Hanson Place tower against the setback. It's too close to the street.
Thank you. Yeah, this is, while I think that the applicants did make some significant changes, they didn't make those changes or some of those changes. But I've been looking at it really carefully and trying to think why I think my views on it have changed. The setback has not significantly changed, although it's been kind of rearranged a little bit. And the massing along Hanson has changed, but the height hasn't really significantly changed to the extent that I had hoped it would. But when I look at the views, my biggest concern was the sense of the district on this block being retained. And that had to do with the relatively lower scale of St. Felix as a block, with one side being townhouses and the other side being a mix of institutional and commercial buildings that were all kind of in a 6-story-ish range. And I felt that the 130 St. Felix worked because of the setback and because of the low piece along St. Felix perpetuating that kind of district quality. And when I look at and maybe it's just that the reviews weren't provided last time, or maybe I didn't connect with them, or maybe it's the shuffling of the steps. I think that even though they didn't modify the overall setback, I think when I look at those views, I think they work. I think that the sense of the street as a relatively balanced, lower scale district holds up even as you see these taller buildings looming off to the side. And I think that the relationship between 130 and 144 is gentle. It doesn't seem jarring to me, even though there's a difference of 8 feet at the minimum. So I can accept that. That was my biggest concern. In situations like this, you gotta be. I'm nervous that, we create camels when we want horses, and the committee can kind of squash the project. But I don't think that's the case in this case. I mean, the project has, I think, become more aesthetically conservative, and I don't celebrate that per se, but I think it's achieved its goals in gaining greater support. The interesting thing about the gasket, for me, is I think it makes the best relationship between the tower and the church by exposing the depth and three-dimensionality of the buttresses. When you look up at the building from below, there you go. You really see that three-dimensional quality of the buttresses kind of echoed in the building, as opposed to having it be a kind of relatively thin elevation-only alignment. And I think that's a very effective move. I think that the symmetry on this facade is I don't think it added or detracted from it, but I think along Hanson, the symmetricalization and pushing back of the gasket there was very effective in making this building feel independent of One Hanson, and yet at the same time giving a deference to that building, allowing One Hanson to be seen as a three-dimensional object from different vantage points, distant and close up. So I can support this. I think that the earlier suggestion that Wellington and Frank had about working with staff on the crown is a good idea. I think that the three-dimensionality that's been achieved at the gasket would read very well in some manner up at the top. Channon Building, I can't remember which building has that kind of similar kind of arrangement at the top. I can't remember which one it is, but I think it's the Channon Building. But that kind of top quality would be an addition to this. But I think that and the last thing I think is very important here that's really helped a lot is the retention of the gable on the north end. When looking from St. Felix, it really maintains the current kind of independence and legibility of the church as a building. We are, as others have said, at this moment thinking a lot about adaptive reuse standards for churches in this day and age. And I think that as protracted as this process worked out to be for this applicant, I think it should be looked at as a model for how to think about adaptive reuses for these challenging buildings.
Thank you. I also think this is a great, creative, adaptive reuse. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Commissioner Chu has already spoken. It's a great creative adaptive reuse, which addresses a couple of our problems in New York City, including what do we do about these beautiful churches, religious properties that we have that don't have money for the repairs and dwindling congregations. And another issue that we have in New York City, which is not necessarily in Landmark's purview, but it's increasing housing and affordable housing as well. I think that through this process and the multiple revisions, this project has really developed into something so much better than what was initially presented. From the streetscape, it really retains a lot of the features of the church. And from the streetscape, you really do sense the church, which has been renovated and repaired. A lot of the changes to the tower, reducing the height, being respectful of One Hanson Place, so that One Hanson Place is really the dominant individual landmark. The applicant has done a wonderful job in being very responsive to a lot of the comments, and we really do appreciate that. So with that, Commissioner Mahan, would you like to read the motion?
Everybody get comfortable. In the matter of LPC 26-03280, 138 to 154 St. Felix Street, aka 11 to 21 Hanson Place, Brooklyn Academy of Music Historic District, a neo-Gothic style church designed by Halsey, McCormick, and Helmer, and built in 1929 to 1930. Application is to alter and demolish portions of the building, remove, replace, and relocate doors and stained glass windows, and construct a tower. I recommend approval. Finding that portions of the building have been unused for almost 20 years, with all services ceasing in 2019, that it suffers from extensive deferred maintenance, and that efforts to lease or reuse the building as is over the past decade have been unsuccessful, and therefore an adaptive reuse is the most likely path to preserve the building. That the building's location over and adjacent to the primary subway and railroad terminal in Brooklyn complicates adaptive reuse. That there is documentary evidence that the church initially considered building a much larger mixed-use building as a way to finance the project, but built the existing church building when it received an endowment. That the design of the purpose-built 1930 steel-framed church building is an unusual example of 20th century ecclesiastical architecture, in that it was designed to accommodate multiple uses in addition to a sanctuary space with integrated commercial storefronts and substantial community spaces, including a ballroom and basketball activities spaces occurring on 2 double-height cellar floors, making it historically more than a church building and uniquely suited to adaptive reuse, with a visible addition consistent with the original design intent. That while the building was designed and built by the same firm and in quick succession with the adjacent Williamsburg Savings Bank with shared services between the buildings, the north-facing facade of the Williamsburg Savings Bank is a secondary facade, and the courtyard setback between the 2 buildings anticipated the possibility of a larger building being constructed on the church site. That the block features a variety of building heights and types and is uniquely composed of larger and or bulkier institutional structures within this otherwise low-scale historic district. Therefore, the proposed tower enlargement is in keeping with the larger scale of this block. That the proposed height of the tower is below the 285-foot height of the main west shoulder of the Williamsburg Savings Bank Tower, relating harmoniously to significant datum lines at the bank building's clock tower, and also is consistent with and relates to the height of the commission-approved tower at 130 St. Felix Street. That the church's shallow-pitched roof without a tower, squat massing of the buttresses, steel framing, and modern brick and cast stone materials comprise a bulk and a design that can support a substantial addition while maintaining its reading and integrity as a historic building with the street fronting facades and setbacks fully retained. That the proposed tower will be set back from the Hanson Place gable to allow the prominent prow of the church form to remain legible as a distinct volume. That the tower will be set back from the north lot line, allowing the stepped base of the original church to be retained, and the north wall will be rebuilt in a single plane with brick and cast stone, retaining both the gabled parapet and the rose window. That the rose window will be reset within a metal tracery to meet code compliance for lot line conditions, and although blocked from the interior, will be illuminated from within. That the double height recess at first 2 floors of the tower above the church creates a visual separation, and buttressing at the new brick piers ties the tower to the church expression. That new railings at terraces will recall the church's decorative pressed metal parapet edge. That the proposed massing of the new tower, broken down by vertical pleats relating to the symmetrical stepped massing of the landmark below, will harmonize with the church and the adjacent Williamsburg Savings Bank individual landmark and the other buildings in the historic district. That the pleated grouping of the proposed tower bays, strong vertical brick piers, and interspersed staggered cast stone cantilevered bands help link the modern tower to the vertical expressions in the Gothic buttressed forms of the historic church. That the materiality and design were not even close. That the materiality and design of the proposed tower, including polychromed patterned brick, soldier coursed spandrels, cast stone trim, punched window openings, and stepped planes, draw from and relate well to the church and the adjacent bank tower. That the tonality and mix of the iron spot brick blend will harmonize with the existing brick at the historic building. That the tower's articulated massing and punched fenestration, featuring windows grouped into bays and set within masonry piers, will relate well to the Williamsburg Savings Bank Tower. that the pattern precast infill of punched openings at the core and vertical finned louvers at the rooftop bulkhead and screen wall relate to tower crowns typical of early 20th century buildings. The proposed design retains all the St. Felix Street and most of the Hanson Place facades and a reconstructed north facade, thereby preserving the reading of the church building as an individual historic structure. That the removal of religious iconography and stained glass windows is required for adaptive reuse of the building for residential purposes. That the restoration, modification, and/or replacement as necessary of tracery and clear leaded glass windows and the relocation of certain non-religious windows to the front facade will retain elements of these significant architectural features on site. That the configuration of the new operable windows and opaque glazed spandrel panels at the floor plates within the new clear glazing at the monumental clear-story windows will reflect the horizontal mutton pattern of the historic protective glazing over the stained glass. That the removal of patterned brickwork at the blind arch-headed recessed bays and installation of new windows will provide light and air to the space within. That modifications to the Hanson Place entrance, including rebuilding the granite stairs to code, retaining and reinstalling the historic doors at their original plane with a change in swing, and the installation of simple glass doors at a recessed plane will create a code-compliant entryway and landing that preserves as much of the historic material as possible. That alterations at the northeast end of the St. Felix Street facade to create a new main residential entrance, including the removal of 2 basement windows, relocation of 1 stair window to align with the floor plate, and lowering the sill of the first floor mullion and transom window are in keeping with the design vocabulary of the building and new floor plate requirements. That historic doors and infill at this entrance are deteriorated beyond repair, and the proposed new entrance infill and sidewalk canopy will fit well within the revised opening and are consistent with both church and residential buildings of this age and style in terms of design and materials. That dropping the sills of the paired narrow window openings at 4 bays along St. Felix Street and replacing the single window with a pair at the northern bay will retain and restore the rhythm of the historic fenestration. That the existing storefront infill has been highly compromised, and the proposed contemporary storefront design and materials will relate well to the masonry enfranements, and the remaining bay window will be replaced in kind. That the wrought iron areaway fencing at St. Felix Street to be removed is simple in design, and its proposed replacement will facilitate the glazed enclosure of the deep areaways, and that the proposed alterations and the construction and sensitive design of the tower will enable this decade-long unoccupied building to be restored and transformed to a new use, thereby supporting the special architectural and historic character of the Brooklyn Academy of Music Historic District.
Thank you. And Commissioner Ginsburg, would you second that?
Second.
Thank you. And Mark, will you call the vote?
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen, Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Ikwembe,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson, Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilder.
Aye.
With 9 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
That's been approved. Let's move to the next item.
Next item is public meeting item number 2, LPC 26-05767. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1384, Lot 32, 700 Park Avenue in the Upper East Side Historic District. This is an apartment building designed by Kahn and Jacobs and Paul Resnick and Harry F. Green and built in 1959. The application is to replace window assembly. This was read into the record at last week's public hearing on March 10th, 2026. However, the application was not presented at that time and no public testimony was taken. So we'll do both of those things today after we open the proceedings.
Thank you. Commissioner Kumbe, would you make a motion to open the proceedings?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Mahan, would you second that?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the proceedings are open.
Okay, commissioners, the applicant has entered the hearing via Zoom. Natalie, you now have control of the presentation. Please state your name for the record, and you can advance the slides using your arrow keys or your mouse. You may begin.
Good morning. My name is Natalie Medina. I am the architect. Okay. Our project is located at 700 Park Avenue, corner of East 69th Street. It is located in the Upper East Side Historic District. The scope of work is to change the configuration and operation of one window on the 20th floor. The window is on the setback facade facing 69th Street. This is the 1981 tax photo, and these are current photos from Park Avenue and from 69th Street. Our window is not visible at street level. And then this is a photo taken from down the block, looking back at the building where the window is visible. This is the window that we want to be replaced. The existing window configuration is a picture window flanked by two double hung windows. And then you can see that while the main facade of the building here has a very highly organized composed facade, the setback facade does not follow the same rhythm. And then these are some examples of buildings in the district of similar typology with highly organized primary facades. And the setbacks lack the same pristine quality. There are different shapes and alignments and details going on. This is the plan of the location of the proposed window. As I said, this is the two double hungs on the side with a picture. And what we want to do is propose a casement with a larger picture window. And then these are elevations of the existing versus proposed. And some section details of each. And then this is a side-by-side illustration of the existing and proposed configuration of the windows. We think the proposed casement and picture assembly adds more glass while keeping the proportions of the double hung assemblies below. And we think visually is in character and fits the aesthetics of the building. That's it.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Okay. Is there, noting that there isn't anybody in the room who would like to testify in this item, let me turn it over to Stephen Thompson to see if we have any remote testimony.
Those joining via Zoom who wish to speak, please raise your hand. After you're promoted to panelist, we ask you to state your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. The first speaker will be Zainab Turan.
Vice Chair Master, Commissioners, my name is Zainab Turan, and I'm speaking on behalf of Friends of the Upper East Side. The photographs demonstrate that the building's original tripartite window configuration remains remarkably intact across floors. However, the 19th floor already shows a notable deviation, and the current proposal for the 20th floor would further depart from this original design. To prevent the incremental loss of buildings' architectural integrity, Friends Preservation Committee strongly urges the development of a windows master plan to guide future alterations on both primary and setback facades, ensuring all work respects the original window pattern and design intent. In the absence of such a master plan, Friends Preservation Committee can accept the current proposal, provided that this configuration does not establish a precedent for future work and should not be used as a model where the original tripartite pattern remains intact. Thank you, Commissioners.
Anyone else wishing to speak, please use the raise hand function. One moment, I'm pulling up the Community Board resolution. All right, Manhattan Community Board 8 recommends approval.
Thank you. Did the applicant want to address any of the comments?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioners, if we don't have any questions, let's go ahead and close the proceedings. Commissioner Kumbe, would you make a motion to close the proceeding?
So move.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that?
No second.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the proceedings are closed. Commissioner Chen, would you like to start this discussion?
Yeah, I think the testimony from the Friends of the Upper East Side says it all. I think that Obviously, it would be preferable to have a master plan for the building, but given its location on the upper floor, I think that, and not setting as a precedent, not taking as a precedent for the future, I think that this is appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Mahan?
I concur.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg?
Appropriate.
Commissioner Wilder?
Appropriate.
Okay, does anybody have any other thoughts? Okay. Oh.
I omitted one item of testimony from Historic Districts Council. They object to the proposed window replacement, noting that the facade is defined by a consistent ABA rhythm of window openings, and the proposed new configuration breaks the established pattern.
Okay, thank you. Does that change anyone's votes or comments? Okay. Commissioner Chen, would you like to read the motion?
Sure. In the matter LPC 26-05767, 700 Park Avenue, the Upper East Side Historic District. The application is to replace a window assembly. Noting the building is not one for which the Upper East Side Historic District was designated. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the proposed windows will match the predominant windows at this building in terms of material and finish, that the proposed configuration comprised of a single fixed light and a smaller operable casement will match existing windows at the setback floor below, and will not detract from the typical tripartite windows found throughout the street fronting facade of the building, that the work is located at the portion of the facade that is set back from the large casement windows assemblies at the adjacent penthouse levels, and that regularized fenestration patterns at the street fronting facade below. Therefore, the proposed work will not detract from a unified fenestration pattern at this portion of the building, that the apartment buildings in this historic district has historically featured a variety of fenestration patterns at the upper level setbacks that may differ from the street fronting facades, including some that may have modified over time, that the proposed work will not detract from the special character of the Upper East Side Historic District.
Thank you. Commissioner Mahan, would you second that?
So second?
Thank you. And Mark, will you call the vote?
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Quimby,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilder.
Aye.
With 9 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
Thank you. That's been approved. Let's move to our next item.
Right, the next item is public meeting item number 3, LPC 25-04617. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, block 2058, lot 40, 188 Duffield Street, aka 182 to 188 Duffield Street. The Duffield Street houses individual landmark. This consists of a Greek Revival style row house built circa 1839, that's number 182, a Greek Revival vernacular style row house built in 1847, that's number 184, a Greek Revival federal style row house built circa 1835 to 38, it's number 186, and a Greek Revival style row house built circa 1835 to 38 and altered in the Queen Anne Second Empire style circa 1881 to 83, that's number 188. All moved to the current site and altered in 1990. The application is to combine the buildings, modify an entrance, partially reconstruct the roofs, interior walls and floors, and rear facades, and construct a new building at the rear of the Test, mic test. Test.
Can hear you now, Corey.
Thank you. All right, it sounds like I cut out halfway through my reading into the record here, so I will read it again. It is a bit lengthy, so here we go. Public meeting item number 3, LPC 25-04617, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 2058, Lot 40. 188 Duffield Street, aka 182 to 188 Duffield Street. The Duffield Street houses individual landmark consisting of a Greek Revival style row house built circa 1839, number 182, a Greek Revival vernacular style row house built in 1847, number 184, a Greek Revival federal style row house built circa 1835 to 38, number 186, and a Greek Revival style row house built circa 1835 to 38 and altered in the Queen Anne Second Empire style circa 1881 to 83, number 188. All moved to the current site and altered in 1990. The application is to combine the buildings, modify an entrance, partially reconstruct the roofs, walls, and floors, and rear facades, and construct a new building at the rear of the site. This was last presented at the public meeting of February 3rd, 2026. No action was taken at that time. The applicants will present revisions to the proposal after we open the proceedings.
Okay. Commissioner Chen, would you make a motion to open the proceedings?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Mahan, would you second?
Second.
Thanks. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the proceedings are open and the applicant may begin.
Thank you. Good morning. We appreciate Karen Binder for the applicant. We appreciate the commission's careful review at the last meeting and the constructive comments provided. Since that time, the applicant has refined the proposal in light of these comments, and we have made targeted modifications. Importantly, the proposal retains the use of the 3 single-family homes, preserving their historic presence as residential architecture, while finally activating, hopefully, a long dormant streetscape as it has sat for over 35 years. As for the modified new building, we are continuing the evolution of Brooklyn's residential neighborhood. The building is planned as a rental, as you know, pursuant to 485X, and includes 20 permanently affordable housing. The modified massing, siting, and architectural expression of the new building reinforces the Commission's longstanding precedents and principles, distinguishing new construction from historic fabric while remaining harmonious in scale, proportion, and relationship to the houses and the existing neighborhood context. We think it strikes an appropriate balance between preservation of historic buildings with carefully calibrated new development that will provide Brooklynites with much-needed housing. And if approved by you, a really great land use story for future generations. Finally, I am pleased to advise the Commission that we received a letter of support from the Reverend, our neighbor at St. Boniface Church, which has been submitted into the record. And with that, I turn it over to our esteemed architect, David West, to begin going through the proposal with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Karen. Good morning, Commission. We came away from our last meeting feeling that we were close to achieving an appropriate outcome. The overall concept was strong, but there were refinements to be made. Many legitimate concerns were raised by the Commission. Certain details needed to be thought through. We re-examined our assumptions and revisited the details and are here today to present an improved scheme. Generally, we looked at the overall height and bulk, the facade composition and details, and the connection between the new building and the townhouses. First of these was the overall height and bulk. We looked carefully at this and have determined that while we cannot reduce the residential height without losing floor area and dwelling units, we can offer an improvement in the form of a reduction in the mechanical height. By changing to a new HVAC system, we are able to remove 10 feet from the bulkhead height. This improves the proportions, reducing what had felt a little top-heavy. Specifically, we're changing excuse me. Specifically, we are changing from a VRF system, which required an extensive rooftop condenser farm, to an HVAC system. This system is modular and self-contained. It is energy efficient and all electric. This is the reason we were able to reduce the height. As a result of this change, we needed to incorporate louvers into the facade, but these are quite small and discreet, as you will see when we show you the facade details. Secondly, we looked again at the overall facade composition. We've made an adjustment to how we transition from the lower portion of the tower, which acts as a backdrop to the townhouses, to the upper stories where the windows are grouped and transition to a taller scale. We have refined the facade details, including the depth of recess, the opening proportions, and the brick details. We think we've achieved a more harmonious relationship with the townhouses and a crisp, well-tailored cladding approach. We've also studied the transition from the lower punched window facade to the upper grouped window facade. We now provide a step transition that relates to the context and emphasizes the vertical subdivisions that are derived from the rhythm of the 4 townhouses. We also studied the top of the building and added some detail there. We looked carefully at the connection between the townhouses and the new building. Specifically, we have advanced the design of the glass wall separating the lobby from the rear of the townhouses, the treatment of the exposed shear walls, and the volume of the triple height lobby space. I also want to emphasize that we have studied the construction logistics and have a plan. We also have designed a foundation that will avoid the need for underpinning either the townhouses or any adjacent properties. We have engineering experts available in the room if there is need to elaborate on these matters. Thank you for pressing us to give you our best efforts. I'm proud of what we have designed and hope you will agree. Now, I want to turn it over to my colleague, Drew Hartley, to present the changes. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Drew Hartley from Atchison Doyle. I'm going to open up with some of the comments that we heard. Some of the comments that we heard last time, specifically the tower. The tower's setback and massing, and if you remember correctly, that we carved at the base, that relationship and how it clarifies the relationship with the townhouses was met as a positive from many of the commissioners. The second piece was the preservation of the townhouses. This has already been mentioned here, so I won't go into more detail, but that was an element that we heard a lot of positive feedback from the commissioners. The removal of the non-historic rear porches. Those elements, we presented evidence that they were not original to the historic footprint of the townhouses, and we heard that seemed to be acceptable by several commissioners. And then finally, the entrance at 188 Duffield Street, it's the left-hand townhouse in this view, was required by code and minimally invasive. The next slides go through, I just wanted to organize the comments that we heard from the commission. What we heard really relates to the 3 parts of the building. There's the base that relates to the townhouses themselves. The middle part of the building is the street wall, and it relates to the context of really the Metrotech building to the right, the Ralph Walker Telephone building to the left. And then there's the upper portion of the building with grouped windows in the top. So I just want to, that's how the presentation is broken down, and we're going to respond to those comments. So I'm going to skip all of this and go directly to the base. So specifically, some of the comments that we heard was we wanted further resolution of how the rear windows of the townhouses, what happens there as they face the lobby of the new building. So this is 186. It is a residential use, and the rear windows will have shadow boxes in them. We're presenting a shadow box with a translucent glass, so there's some depth in the rear facade, but these will not be visible from the inside the residence to the lobby of the larger building. Second, is we heard that we should consider the materiality of the shear wall. Previously, it was a washed concrete finish, and we reconsidered both the color and the texture of that finish. We are still proposing concrete, but it's board form concrete, which breaks down the scale of that shear wall. It still has the opening that frames the church window across the neighboring adjacent building. But the board form concrete breaks down the scale to the scale of the clapboard siding of the townhouses or the brick of the townhouses and is more harmonious with that small scale at the base of the building. The photo on the left, you can see an example of how a board form concrete cast on a column looks. And then in the back of this, there's other examples of how that scale is broken down on a massive structural element. Okay, second piece was the curtain wall. It's a fire-rated curtain wall that separates the lobby of the building to the townhouses. There's a 5-foot gap between those spaces. And the comments that we heard were just needed more study, that it was unresolved in several ways. We're coming back to the commission with a revised proposal. So number one, the finish of those mullions is different, and we think it relates well to the color and the finish of the townhouses. Two, we have unified the ceiling plane of the lobby. There's no longer a step. It's the same height all the way across. And we've pushed everything up an additional 4 feet, which gives more light. You can see more light coming across the townhouse roofs. And the grid has been regularized and feeds into the proportions of the townhouses. So you can see the grid here. It is a uniform grid across the facade. So there are lots of things that don't align because these townhouses step and the windows don't align perfectly. However, the big move of 3 bays high aligns with our 3 stories high. The proportions of these openings are roughly twice as tall as they are wide, which is a similar proportion to the residential windows at the townhouses and overall the townhouse proportion of its width to its height. The connector between the lobby and the townhouses was also studied and simplified. It has been incorporated into 1 bay of the curtain wall, and the opening is simplified as it goes into the townhouse. Slide. So previously we had double doors that were on the facade, and this was the opening into the hallway, which got you out of the building. We studied that further and aligned the head of this opening with the adjacent windows. It is a framed opening, and those doors are recessed. We felt that the smaller opening and the alignment with the windows next door was more appropriate in scale for this rear facade. As you walk through this space, the mullions of the grid of the curtain wall are the big element, but the roof fits within that form. So it is dropped and framed within it so that we can don't have any projections above that. The material will match the rest of the curtain wall. Just looking at the section, it's a very small piece of roof. It's 5 feet deep. It's roughly 5 feet wide. We felt that it was appropriate to pitch it a low slope roof off the side without a gutter, just with a drip edge to keep the form minimal. So you can see in this view, there's an access door in where it says B, which gets us into that 5-foot gap between the townhouses and the curtain wall. And then also the doors into the vestibule of the townhouse and out to the street are recessed from that rear facade. And then coming full circle here, we started with the materiality of those shear walls. This is the view down both alleys where you see the material. It is darker concrete than we previously presented, and its texture relates more to the texture of the brick and the texture of the clapboard siding of the townhouses. All right, as we transition up the building, some of the comments that we heard were the details. We just wanted to focus on the details and specifically the transition between the punched window openings and the group window openings. So the existing condition of the townhouses, the Metro Tech building is on the right-hand side. The Ralph Walker building is on the left-hand side. They are masonry buildings with punched window openings. Our proposal is also a masonry building with punched window openings. As David previously stated, we transitioned to a different mechanical system. So some of the changes that you will see is there is a louver below these windows for an HPAC unit. So it is uniform, but it's in the same finish as the window, and it still reads as a punched window opening. Previously, we had additional mullions, horizontal mullions in these windows. Those have been removed so that it's a clear articulation as a rectangle punched opening. And the proportions of those windows has also changed to be more vertical and less square, similar to the 2-to-1 ratio that you see on the lower part of the building. Something happened with this graphic, so I'm going to skip this slide. And you'll see here, we wanted to show the punch window openings. These two slides, something happened. So the proportions of this is incorrect, and we'll show it later with other slides. But the point of this is that these are the details of the punched window openings. This is our distributed HPAC units below the windows. They have a louver that goes below the window, and then the brick spandrels between the windows. So this has been developed and detailed. The transition between the punch window openings and the grouped window openings has also been studied. Previously, we had it stopping fairly uniformly at the height of the Metro Tech building to the right. We took a look at the context in more detail and really understand that there are a lot of things happening with the context. This is an individual landmark, but this part of the building really responds to the neighborhood and the scale of Metro Tech. We also wanted to respond to the scale of the surrounding building. So that height of the transition is taller on the left-hand side, and it comes down to the height of the street wall on the Metro Tech side. And you can see it here in perspective. From the street, we just wanted to reiterate that with the setback of the tower now being behind the townhouses completely, you read this as a background building. It is still read that way. This is, an oblique view from down the block. And from the other direction, it reads as a background building. It reads as a masonry punched window opening building. And as you get to the corner of the block, you see it over the roof of St. Boniface Church, and it becomes part of the context of the neighborhood, and we're happy with that relationship. All right, moving up to the top of the building. The big takeaways that we had from the last meeting were the height of the building, focus on the details of the windows, and refine everything into a cohesive whole. I just wanted to reiterate, the massing of this building is derived from the townhouses. The profile of the building itself traces the rear facades of the townhouses. That is why there is a recess in the facade. It's broken into 4 divisions relating specifically to the townhouses below. And then the latest change is that the transition between those punch windows and the group windows is relating more to the context. So some additions that we have made since the previous hearing is we have refined the details at the primary brick pier and the secondary brick pier to add more relief, more shadow lines, more texture, and we can see that in the overall elevation, but the net result is that the verticality has been emphasized and the depth of the facade has been enhanced. There was a comment about the finish of the slab covers and the uniformity of what's happening when we have grouped window openings. And that has all been changed to be the same material. So it's uniform material where you have grouped openings. The brick that we're proposing, the glass we're proposing has not changed since our previous hearing. But looking further at those details, this is in the grouped window part of the building. You will see the HVAC unit behind, and the grills are incorporated at the slab level. There's a slab cover below that, and there's more articulation in these windows. They're broken down. There's an additional mullion as we get to the grouped windows. So the simplicity of the rectangle windows at the punch window openings breaks down and has more filigree as it moves up the building. Again, looking at that in whole, the vertical elements of the primary and secondary piers have been emphasized, and then the transition between the middle of the building and the top of the building has also been emphasized. David stole my thunder here with a 10-foot bulkhead reduction, but I think that is an important piece to this. We did study many ways to reduce height, and changing the mechanical system, I think, has two benefits. One of being the primary use today, and then two is we get a 10-foot reduction off the bulkhead height. And then further detailing at the top of the building. We wanted to show the axonometric. This is not a view that you're going to see. There's a building in front of this, but I think the scale of the building overall relates to the scale of buildings in downtown Brooklyn. There's a tower next door that is a similar height. The Metro Deck building across the street that you can't see in this view is a very similar height. And the total composition of this is, we feel strongly about it, that it's contextual and fits on this site. So I putting this up side by side just to remind us where we were and where we are today. So I think a lot of the revisions that we've made at the base of the building aren't visible in here. They're really visible from the lobby renderings, which we showed originally. But as you move up to the building, you can see that there's more depth in this facade. There's more texture to the vertical piers, primary and secondary piers. And our materiality in the grouped windows is uniform. We don't have varying materials, and I think there's a lot of clarity as you move up the building. So finally, we heard your comments, and we're coming back with those refinements, and we'd love to hear your comments.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Commissioner Jefferson?
Can you hear me? Okay. Mark, I need some clarification. A landmark building. If over time it has accretions put on it, and in say 1970, it's a landmark, the whole building is a landmark, right? Including the additions that were done over time. Is that correct?
Sure. I mean, the commission has jurisdiction over an entire building, all, on all facades and all aspects of it. So an addition, a later addition added to the building is part of the landmark. It is, and it's the designation report oftentimes will identify whether things are significant features or not, even if you can't see them. Sometimes we just know that they are, even if the designation report doesn't identify them. But ultimately, I assume you're talking about the rear porches. Is that what you're talking about
I'm
here?
talking about the building as a whole, the three-dimensional building.
Yeah, the
So
building.
therefore, removing any of that is removing historic fabric, right?
Well, the question is
therefore,
whether you are removing significant historic fabric.
Significant is the word.
Well, yes, and whether you think that the again, I assume we're talking about the rear.
I'm talking about these, the removal of fabric.
Right.
and
Is something for you,
significant
is something for you to decide whether it detracts from the landmark, whether it's important to keep it, or whether you think it can be removed in a way that is appropriate for the adaptive
So
reuse and
the
other things.
definition of landmark is up to the commissioners.
Well, no, I'm not sure what you're asking.
saying
quite frankly.
landmark-
The landmark
A
is
building is a building of
correct.
volume. You say it's a landmark, right? In
Entire
my
building,
judgment,
all facades are
it should
included.
be-
Yeah,
The volume, the whole thing is a landmark.
correct.
So once you start to remove stuff of it.
Well, the commission removes.
personal view, it's not a landmark anymore. It's something else. And
No, it's a landmark that has been modified in a way that the commission finds appropriate as the law would define it. So there's nothing in the landmarks law that says designated buildings cannot change. In fact, it's the opposite. The certificate of appropriateness process
The word
is
is
designed to allow change. And in many ways, what we do here is we regulate change to ensure that change over time is appropriate to the significant architectural features and the reasons for which something is designated.
Okay, so the wording, okay, okay, I think I got it, okay.
And just to clarify further, I think as the applicant noted, the rear additions here were reconstructions. These buildings were not originally on this site. They were moved from a couple of blocks away, reinstated, and the additions were, kind of put back on to the back of them. So again, as Mark said, while we may regulate them, those aren't historic fabric if they were reconstructions from, a few decades ago.
But they're still landmark once they're moved.
They're regulated by the Landmarks Preservation Commission, but whether or not it's a significant feature of a landmark, I think is quite questionable if it's a reconstruction from just the last couple of decades.
So
Not everything on the site is a significant feature of the site.
my crazy architectural thinking is the amount of degrees of how much you remove, right? I mean, if you say, how much do I take away? Instead, what am I basing all that stuff on?
I think you are able to compartmentalize and say that, hey, these reconstructed extensions off the back are not, if this is what you think, are not significant features. They're not historic fabric in the way that's usually thought of. And I think the fact of the matter is the commission approves, even at staff level, the removal of rear additions and Ls all the time when they lack significant architectural features, even if they're actually very old. So again, I think you kind of just consider all of those factors.
Thank you.
Commissioners, any other questions? Commissioner Mahan?
A few questions, please. I was a little confused by a statement made at the beginning that the landmarks were now being preserved as homes. That was the case previously, was it not? Is there a change there? That the landmark buildings are being utilized for residential use? Was that the case at the last public meeting?
Sorry. No, that's not a change from our last proposal. We had originally planned to convert them to community facility use, but that had been eliminated last time we met.
Thank you very much. I have a few, not organized, but a few different detailed questions. Why are you using translucent glass in shadow boxes in the historic buildings facing the new tower lobby?
The shadow box, there's two parts to it. There's one, there's an aluminum pan inside the shadow box to give depth to that window.
Which you won't see because you put translucent glass in front.
I think translucent in our mind is the varying degree of translucency.
Okay.
And picking.
Got it. Okay, understood. Thank you. Do you have any details of the fire rated curtain wall showing, dimensions of the mullions and what is the finish?
The mullions are 2.5 inches wide. And the finishes here are, it's a steel frame system for the curtain wall because it's fire rated. So this is the Tiger Dry Lac finish is proposed.
2 different colors, outside and inside. Yeah. On page 13, you were just there. Explain what we're looking at. I did not understand this drawing.
So the left-hand image is the previous proposal that we came to you with.
What's the white versus red dashed lines?
The white is the connector as it connects back to the lobby. The red is the proposed opening on both left and right-hand images.
Oh, you're dimensioning different things in the before. I changed. Okay. And then the sides of the tower, last question, are brick at the bottom. I mean, concrete at the bottom, but they're brick above that, if I understand that correctly. Like if you're looking through the alleyway, there you were just a moment ago. So does the brick stop at a datum and then the concrete is now exposed and continues down? Do I understand that correctly, and why did you make that decision?
Jump into.
Well, look, it's an aesthetic decision. We like mass concrete as a material to support a tower, and the brick would stop. There's a soffit under the brick, so the shear wall that you see is set back away from the surface of the brick. It's actually a pretty similar condition to that image we showed you. Sorry, where that would be. Oh, it's further back, the image with pink side. We've done a similar move before, and we thought it worked well. So you can see on the left, that's a building that has a brick facade. It stops at a concrete structural element, and the structure is expressed at the base. It's just a nice, robust termination for the building as it meets the ground.
Thank you.
Commissioner Goldblum?
Continuing in the detail vein, the bricks are Norman and modular, so they're both 2 and 2/3 inches high. Is that the case? No jumbos? Great. And what happens in that 3-foot or 5-foot space? Looks like you have a couple of potted plants in there. What's going on in there?
Yeah, it's a little outdoor courtyard. I believe it will have stone, loose stones on the floor, and it'll be treated, landscaped and treated as a little Zen garden, if you will.
But it's open to the air. It'll get rain and a smidgen of sun, right?
Right.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Any other questions? Oh, Commissioner Chen?
If you go back to drawing 33. The previous one, the 32, I guess. Yeah. The window lack of mullions or muntins. 2 part to my question: does this increase the burst strike probability? And have you considered what's the reason for removing or the decision not to add the mullion?
Look, I think it's just a cleaner look. As far as bird strikes are concerned, as I understand it, you'd have to get very tightly spaced mullions to accomplish what we can otherwise accomplish with a UV coating on the glass, which is what's proposed. We're going to use Ornolux glass up to the 75-foot mark, which is what's required in the local law, and that has a translucent, almost invisible UV inner layer that birds can see, but humans cannot, supposedly. You can kind of see it in the right light. An aesthetic decision, I think, to eliminate gratuitous mullions. We do have vertical mullions in some of the upper windows.
So is it also your intention to emphasize the verticality? Because, you know.
Yeah, I think the overall changes have given it a more vertical character.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Jefferson?
Could you remind me, what is the program for the 4 historic buildings? In terms of
The-
occupancy?
The occupancy of the 3 on the right-hand side will be residential. They're entered from their stoops. They do not have a connection to the lobby. And then the building on the far left, 188 Duffield, is an entrance, and it has a retail component in it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. So I think we had a lot of letters and emails on this item, this project that was shared in advance with the commissioners, and I'm going to turn it over to Stephen Thompson to review them.
Since the February 3rd public meeting, LPC received written comments recommending denial from the Historic Districts Council, Victorian Society of New York, the Brooklyn Heights Association, and the Downtown Brooklyn Community Association. LPC receives written comments recommending approval from the Roman Catholic Church of St. Boniface, and written comments from 17 individuals recommending denial.
Thank you. Commissioners, if there aren't any other questions, let's go ahead and start our discussion. So I'm going to ask Commissioner Ginsburg to start this discussion, and I'll just remind you of your comments. The last time you felt that the revisions had been much better, and the positives, you like the setback, keeping the rear facades, punched openings at lower floor, and you thought that the facade was background enough, and you were okay with the overall height.
Thank you. So I'm going to go through a fair amount of detail, but when I visited the site before the first presentation, these buildings were relocated into what I'd call a valley. They're surrounded by taller buildings except for the church, but behind the church is a much taller, or to the left of the church. And so my biggest question was, how am I going to perceive these buildings? I know we now have 3 of the 4 are fully independent, but they're all, and when I looked at slides 25 and 26, as I walk down the street, I think I would perceive these buildings very much as individual buildings surrounded by tall buildings, which is what they are now. So that was my first one. I think, no, and this was a change between the first and second presentations we saw, is exposing the rear facades was important to treat these buildings as buildings and not as just facadism, that they're largely enclosed. So now let me go through some of the changes, which in general I think were positive. The board treated concrete, add some texture is good. It's also good to see the church window. The change in the color of the curtain wall really, I think, helps. Although, making the connector simpler makes it more background and also helps. Unified lobby ceiling just, again, simplifies, makes the view of the existing buildings better. Okay. Something you didn't say, but in the mechanical change, not only are you lowering height, by getting rid of the VRF, you're getting rid of hundreds and hundreds of feet of field-applied piping with gas that makes carbon seem like small change. And so I think that is, although not directly our purview, is an added plus of changing the mechanical system. And I think having this window transition, which sort of makes me feel like your diagram is a wave, ties better into the context of what's happening in the buildings around. And when you transition from the punched windows to what I'll call the ganged windows. And so in general, I think the facade updates are an improvement. So I can find this appropriate as is, and I'll be curious what my fellow commissioners say.
Thank you. Commissioner Mahan, you liked that the new building was no longer a rooftop addition. You were happy with the retention of the rear facades. You think the tower was a successful backdrop at the lower levels, and you were okay with the overall height. You were concerned with the courtyard. You wanted them to rework the glass wall. You wanted details for how the wall met the townhouse, mullions and gable. You wanted it to be, you wanted more details. And you wanted them to rethink the 186 opening and show views down the alley at 188. And you asked about what the material of the sheer wall was. I think you didn't like the unfinished concrete. And you wanted them to think more about the lower level tower design.
Thank you, Commissioner Master. Yeah, so, I'd like to start by saying I think at the last meeting, I guess was a public meeting, the applicant, overcame for me the significant hurdle of allowing for a tall building of some kind behind these historic buildings. They had, moved massing, and sort of made various appropriateness arguments for the presence of, a large building essentially in the rear yard of these small historic townhouses. To me, that was the crux of the discussion. And, some comments were made almost sort of for the first time. We were able to move on to then thinking about issues of the proposed new architecture itself, scale, height, proportions, details, and, I think most critically, relationship, if any, to the historic buildings. There was some thought about, does the rear building expressed and perceived as a backdrop building, how appropriate is that? I do think I, had some commentary about bringing a greater level of sort of detail, nuance, and, hopefully relationship or being derived in some way from the historic building. So I have to say, I remain in the camp of accepting the presence of a large building in this location, but also remain unconvinced about the tower design itself and some of the additional details. A few thoughts about that. I have to say the modifications overall made, I find to be so subtle to be almost not noticeable in general across the entire project. 10 feet is negligible in the scale of this building. The treatment of the facade is, while the grouped windows and the shorter punched windows, the transition moved, I don't find there to be a ton of change there. And so maybe to help this along, I think it would be very productive if the applicant could speak to what is their idea for the new tower building. What is the design concept specifically, and what is its relationship to the landmarked buildings? You know, I understand that there's a setback in the massing, which relates to the third building from the left here. Forgive me for not remembering the number. That's a good start. But in my view, building a big building of anything near this scale in this rear yard is a big ask. And so the tower design must, I think, respond with a clearly articulated idea about a, you know, nuanced relationship to the historic buildings. And, you know, I don't think it's my place to propose or say to the applicant what that should be. But I am having a hard time understanding, you know, what that proposal would be. You know, when we step back, you know, a few comments, I think, you know, that's a big comment that probably will rework other things and make, you know, more minor commentary sort of less important. But if we step back in some of the far views, I have to say the tower somehow seems even bigger than it was last time. Something about the proportion of the windows. I think the mini cornices are a mistake and do not belong on a contemporary building like this. Now, you know, it could be designed with more historic features and make, you know, some kind of crown expression, you know, appropriate. But at the current design, I think they, you know, are sort of awkward minor appendages. In terms of the details, the window details, great that the slab covers became consistent. I find the windows below became too plain and the windows above became too fussy, with lots of sort of details that don't really relate to too much. You know, and then going to the glass lobby behind the historic buildings. There were some improvements there. Thank you very much for that. You know, I think like leveling off the lobby ceiling, you know, is an improvement, but the modulation remains awkward. There is a small, almost transom-like group of windows at the top. You know, it was stated it was 3 bays. It's actually 3 bays plus a little leftover. The idea and then its resolution creates, in my mind, awkwardness all over the place. The transom is awkward in the connection. You have a access door put in a mullion at an awkward place in the side. You know, there either needs to be a new idea or a much greater focus on resolution of the details. Pull off this idea, and like this idea has the potential to be quite magical. But to do that, you know, the detailing needs to be just absolutely exquisite and perfect. So there's a lot of potential there, but it's a tall ask, you know, that you've set for yourself. So I think there's still work to be done in both the massing. I think that's actually the biggest issue, the sort of massing and idea of the tower, but also in the way that it meets the ground and the historic buildings. But thank you for the thoughtful advancements nonetheless.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen, you wanted them to look at the lobby detailing. You liked the punched windows at the lower tower. You were okay with the porch removals. You wanted them to restudy the top proportions and focus on the base tower.
Yeah, starting at the base, I think that obviously I think the glass detailing and the refinement there is better than last time. But much like Commissioner Mann, I think the backdrop massing of it remains a issue for me. I think that the building seemed, as the word he just used, is bland, especially with lack of detailing. I am struggling to understand, you know, the the logic behind it, even though I commend them for successfully preserving the individual landmarks, the houses on the bottom, and restore them to the prior use after all these decades. But I think that the language, the design language in the back requires further study.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum, you had said that you were okay because it's not a historic district and the individual landmarks are an artificial setting. So you were okay with the rear tower. You agreed with Commissioner Mahan about detailing. Let's see. Doesn't like the change from the background to primary building at the 10th floor. You didn't like the finish, black and white gray, and do more to break up. Let's see. Think about the scale. The tower is a little too high, and you wanted it to be lower to the height of the Walker Building. Rethink the concrete shear wall and the visibility, and design details for the bump outs. And you said that the glass wall is odd, and you wanted them to look at the grid of the mullions.
Thanks. Well, I don't know what that guy said, but I don't know. I got out of the wrong side of the bed today. I don't know. The question that presented itself to me today, which obviously didn't present itself to me last time, is when would an addition like this not be okay? Just like no on an individual landmark. Why is this okay on an individual landmark? You know, if you're a public library, new policy was set. We're going to put housing on behind all the libraries in New York. That'd be okay. That not be okay. I mean, and I think my next thought on that depressing track was, well, what's our standard? And our standard tends to be, you know, does it detract from the special historic and architectural character of the buildings? Does this detract from the special architectural and historic character of these buildings? I can't see an argument to say that it doesn't. I mean, the historic character of the buildings is as a group of single-family or formerly, you know, townhouses that are on a site. The site was deemed to be not the end of the buildings, but the end of the property. And that tells me that there's a significance to the volume of the houses and the air that they sit in and the relationship of those buildings to the city. And I'm just having a hard time kind of getting my head around the idea. I don't know. I mean, I think to my mind of examples of similar projects, and I can't think of one that made the case that it didn't detract from the building sufficiently to, you know, I mean, I'm sure we could probably find some. I just can't think of any right now. So I'm kind of troubled by the concept. I think that the details, I find myself agreeing with Frank on much of his analysis of the building. As it is, I think that the introduction of the cornice, the kind of S-shaped cornice, does feel like it comes from a different vocabulary, a different kind of building. I mean, this is a very vertically articulated, Art Deco-ish kind of vocabulary, and to throw these kind of cornices across just as a, you know, kind of red pencil across the facade seems disconnected from the language that they've chosen to use. I think that the use of exposed board-formed concrete is I love the material, but I'm not sure that I think on the left side next to the church, it kind of works better because it reads as a base. But for me, on the right side, where you see it down that little alley, it works to emphasize the kind of grander, more over, the great disparity in scale between the proposed building and the historic buildings. Those buildings are articulated at 1-story increments, and this column is bigger than them all. It's kind of it's a real jump in scale that seems discordant. And it also, because it's a round column supporting a big square brick building, it kind of looks like it stilts, and it's kind of holding this big, heavy weight, teetering on tiptoes above this void behind these buildings. It just doesn't look to me like it enhances experience of the historic buildings, let's put it that way. I also question that 5-foot space. I mean, what's that going to be? Gravel on the bottom, hard, one door to get in. Live in there, maybe. It'll definitely get, birds and debris and stuff. It seems like it's going to be, I worry that it's not going to do the historic buildings a whole lot of favors in how they appear, or their condition, but I don't know, it just seems like a not very pleasant space. The default would be to make it much greener, but I don't know if it'll work, that would be my concern. I'm having a hard time with this one today.
Thank you. I think what we're going to do is we're going to jump to Commissioner Chu for your comments. Commissioner Chu, I think last time you weren't here for the last iteration.
Right. Oh, so, okay. I did see it. Maybe I was there on the field trip, but I wasn't at the prior hearing. Again, this is a very interesting case. These houses were relocated from another location. Their importance was significant to save them and to retain their sense of scale on the street. Now, does the proposal harm that? Is that sense of scale retained? I think from the diagrams shown and the setback demonstrated, I would argue that yes, the sense of scale and presence of those houses are still there on the streetscape. The one view that I'd hoped the applicant would show, I didn't see, but it would have been a street view looking at 4 Metrotech on the other side of the street. I tend to look at this also from the large scale because it's such a large proposal for a tower. And it really is in sort of this backdrop of 3 and 4 Metrotech within that campus in terms of material, fabric, and aesthetic. In that situation, I think from a street view, the houses retain that low rise sense of scale next to the church. The proposed addition set back behind the houses, I think from a massing perspective, give the sense of a backdrop. So I think I do feel that the backdrop effect is somewhat effective. I don't feel like these houses have been demolished in any way or half of them eaten away. In terms of the overall mass, I can see that it's the building form, the tower is trying to take on context as its precedent to define itself. In the overall massing complex, it feels tall to me in this corner, in a sense, it's a relationship to 3 Metrotech behind, which has sort of that crowning element. there was no views of it shown from the north, I guess the northwest corner, which I was hoping also to see because of its height, it's visible from all sides. To that point, I do find the articulation, I appreciate more texture on the facade. I think that helps a little. I tend to agree with comments made by my fellow commissioners that the building seems to lack a sense of identity. The context that it attempts to relate to with the horizontal banding, I don't find very successful. It feels like it might have, it's more of an afterthought to then apply that because they're expressed in such a way that they look applied. Typically that type of move is associated with a change in plane or material above or below as a massing approach as well, which would be a different way to look at this, but this is just applied. So I find those horizontal bands relating to their neighboring contexts somewhat ineffective and superficial. The transition in window heights, which suggests a sort of almost a big change at those overall of a transition that may be more of an ombre, but on a slope, I feel is also a bit awkward. I just think that the building design needs to have, even as a backdrop building, it is of a scale that needs to command its own identity and presence. Even if it is more of a calm backdrop building, it can still have handsome proportions and be a respectful component of this block. I think it's challenged still from a massing perspective. I do question its height. The moves that were done behind, I don't have a lot of comment on. I find that the changes were not that much. I think my bigger issues are the facade treatment and also a language, maybe a story about what this tower is. I find the top proportion of the crowning element. I know there were comments made to give it more articulation. Also not that satisfying, and I think that the change in proportion that didn't help it. I feel that the top piece, the tallest piece, needs more height. And if a few floors were taken off from the original proposal, that might have been a more handsome top piece. Yeah, I think that it needs a relook at exactly what this massing and identity and window fenestration moves mean as an individual piece that is contextual in its language of window forms or in terms of its material use, but I don't feel it contextual enough in that sense to the large scale.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's move to Commissioner Jefferson. In the previous iteration, you had said that the individual landmarks feel penned in, that the building is too tall. And then, or you, that you wanted them to contextualize the facade more.
So let me start with the landmark buildings. These houses are already compromised. They were moved from Johnson Street. The original context and setting that gave them meaning is lost. But now they can create a new story that gives meaning. One of the stories is that they have become habitable spaces again. And I think that's a good beginning, that they're brought back to their original use. The problem I have is with the lobby and the relationship of the lobby to these houses. And these houses and the relationship to the tower. You know, there should be some kind of, not just window placement, there should be some kind of relationship, say with the lobby. these buildings had a backyard, and perhaps that alley, that 5-foot alley doesn't do that, doesn't work. It's just doesn't make any sense. If there was a way that they could include their lobby as a backyard for this building to make it seem like they're working together, not just looking at a lobby in between, a kind of alley in between the two buildings. And then the tower itself, the scale of it is so high, but we have to have that. I think we need housing. How can they resolve a background building with a historic building and say that they have some kind of relationship to each other? Right now, they don't. That's a very difficult problem to do architecturally, but they have not done it yet.
Thank you. And Commissioner Ikumbe, you liked that they were retaining the individual landmarks and exposing the corners. You wanted them to look at the punched window openings and perhaps varying them. You wanted them to look at articulation and the lobby relationship you said is awkward, but you like the courtyard.
I guess to reiterate, yes, I like the preservation of the existing landmarks. I think the bigger issue at hand is the tower behind and how it works as a backdrop to the existing landmarks. I appreciate the attempt to work on the punched openings to give yourself a little more freedom to work in its layout and design. But it's in relationship to the massing of the building itself and the tower itself. I agreed with the comments about the midway cornices. More or less, they do look applied. And I think one of the reasons why it was applied is to detract from the verticality of the massing itself. So as was also noted that usually there's a material change, or maybe there's even more relief or depth to show those types of transitions. I'm unsure of the use of using mullions on the upper windows and just punched openings on the lower windows. It creates an odd condition, I believe. And I guess I'm still having an issue at the courtyard. I enjoy the concept, but I think how that reads needs to be worked out a little more. I do believe it's very shallow, and it reads more like an areaway than a courtyard. And you may also want to look at how light actually gets into that area as well. It's a very narrow space that's utilized. But overall, those are my comments.
Thank you. And Commissioner Walder, last time you said it was improved from before, but you wanted them to work on articulation at the tower facade. You wanted it to complement the individual landmarks. You were not okay with them increasing the height. You were okay with the porch removals. You wanted them to look at the lobby glass wall again and the walls at 182 and 184 and the relationship to the tower wall. And you were happy that there was no underpinning.
Yeah, thank you. I think the things that I appreciated about the project were accomplished in the previous iteration, which was the concern of the historic landmark buildings And so I'm glad nothing was done to kind of alter that. I think that's the strongest part of the project. But I think it also creates the challenge with the tower because of their presence and because of this project, and this being an opportunity to create a new tower that can be anything that you can come up with. I think that the difference in the previous design to now is very minimal. I don't think the changes that were made would get someone excited about this being a new tower on a site with historic landmark buildings. I think Commissioner Chu made a very good statement about how this building can kind of create its own identity, because the way the buildings are kind of situated in this valley, as I think Commissioner Ginsburg said, it does create this opportunity for this building to play as a backdrop, but because of its height, because of its massiveness and its scale, it also becomes very, very dominant, especially above those buildings as it relates to the context of the block. And so I think that there needs to be just more work on the facade to I can't say exactly what that is, but I think there needs to be more work on the facade, on the cornices, on the top of the building, just to make it that it actually complements the buildings, the landmark buildings. As far as the courtyard, I don't mind the idea of the courtyard, but I am concerned with how it functions, how it's maintained. I think that creates more issues than what it may solve. Maybe it needs to be bigger, but I think it's not at that sweet spot yet where it actually works in terms of its size and depth. I think creating the same height of that ceiling was an improvement compared to what was there before. I think the new curtain wall is better. It's more simplified. It takes less attention away from the rear walls here, as well as the entrance. I think it's an improvement as well, so I'm okay with those. But yeah, I think overall my issue is with the tower, and it we know it's tall, but I think the design makes it feel even taller than what it is. And I think the applicant needs to work on that part, as kind of not making it feel so tall. And yeah, so those are my comments.
Thank you. So we're not going to take any action, and Corey is going to summarize kind of the comments.
Thank you. Well, I think I'll just keep this simple. I mean, I think, I think this is the third time I think we've seen this at this point. And so, as was noted, the big gesture from the last public meeting of really moving much of the work off of the landmark buildings, with the exception of the one that still needed to be reconstruction. I think there was a broad support for that, and sort of opened the door to propose a tower structure in the background. However, I think as we heard today, the commissioners again broadly felt that the design of the tower remains unresolved, and perhaps without its own identity, one that would allow it to, attempt to relate both to the landmark buildings as well as its context, and that the changes that were brought forth didn't really move the needle in terms of accomplishing that. So I think the staff will continue to speak with the applicants and work with them on developing kind of I think, a narrative that addresses the design decisions that are being made, as well as presumably some revisions to the design that start to get to some of the points and concerns that were discussed here today. And similarly, we'll look at the courtyard again, both in terms of the execution of some of the detailing, but also the sort of the feeling of the sort of atrium space between the two buildings and the transition, from the front of the houses into this new lobby space. Take another look at that as well. Right. So thank the applicants for presenting today. We'll speak with you outside, but for now, we'll be moving back to our public hearing agenda and resuming with public hearing item number 3. That is public hearing item number 3, LPC 26-00012, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 285, Lot 25. This is a Greek Revival style brick house built in 1848 to 52. And the application is to construct a rooftop bulkhead and railing and alter the top floor of the rear facade and install a lot line window.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. My name is Richard Grizaru. I am the architect for 152 Atlantic Avenue, one of a series of row houses, three with commercial space. There we go. One of a series of 19th century row houses with commercial storefronts at the sidewalk level. The building is located on the very northern edge of the Cobble Hill Historic District. And here we can see the surrounding context. The building has been in the owner's family for decades, and my client is planning interior renovations of all 3 of the upper floors, as well as some work on the exterior, two aspects of which I will be presenting today. First, rooftop additions that are partially visible from Atlantic Avenue and Clinton Street to the north, and then modifications to the top floor at the rear of the building, which are not visible. I'm going to show you the proposed project, but we'll start, if you would focus on the image on the upper left, which is the existing conditions. The 2 neighboring buildings are shown, as well as our building, with that heavy profile in the foreground being the building to our west, which is 4 stories at the front, but then steps down to 2 stories at the back. Our building and its neighbor to the east are 4 stories, the full depth of the building, with roofs that slope to the center. And the new image shows the proposed work. My client, who will inhabit the top floor apartment, will tell you that he remembers going up on the roof with his grandmother to watch fireworks. So an important part of the renovation is to provide a rooftop deck that will enable those same views. So we're proposing to, starting about 13 feet back from the face of the building, raise the roof to increase ceiling heights at the top floor, install those 2 sawtooth skylights, install a roof deck with railing, and build a stair and bulkhead to provide access. As part of this work, we have to extend some plumbing vents, and then towards the rear of the building, not visible, there will be mechanical equipment and such. Here's a quick look at the front elevation, existing on the left, proposed on the right, with the relative heights of our new elements on the roof. And in this sightline drawing, we're showing 2 things. First, along Atlantic Avenue, and our mock-up will confirm this, the railing is only minimally visible. However, as you move north along Clinton Street, which has a slight uphill incline, the railing and other elements become more fully visible. There is a rooftop mock-up in place, the front railing, the bulkhead, the front skylight, and these 2 pipes that we've had to raise, one of which is on a neighboring building. Before I move on, I want to share that we did do, in an earlier proposal, the railing was somewhat more forward and the bulkhead was a little taller. After discussions with LP staff, we moved the railing back a little bit and we lowered the bulkhead, and that's what you're looking at today. The next few slides are taken along Atlantic Avenue, showing the railing. This is actually the high point along Atlantic Avenue here on this corner, so it's where it's most visible. And as we move west and eventually directly across the building, you see our railing. and then it becomes obscured by the cornice of the adjacent building. Now I have photographs from up Clinton Street where we see how the railing becomes more visible and you begin to see the bulkhead. Note that we're planning, we're planning to remove some abandoned chimneys. And on the next slide, you'll see a montage where we're trying to show the appearance and the materials. The railing will be constructed of steel pipe painted gray with a stainless steel mesh. The bulkhead will be clad in a gray metal standing seam. There's a skylight that will be similarly clad. Pipes will be painted gray, and the intent, of course, is to lessen the visibility of these elements under both sunny and cloudy conditions. Here we see examples of the materials. And on the left, I'm showing photographs of a recently approved and currently under construction project at One Willow Place, a few blocks away, which is a good example of a similar gray-colored metal-clad bulkhead and a gray painted railing. A couple more photos from Clinton Street. As you can see, the bulkhead becomes sort of maximally visible and then disappears behind that apartment building on the corner. Before I continue, I just want to address a resolution passed by the Community Board 6, which approved this project, but on the condition that the railing be moved back. I believe the motion was proposed as a compromise between committee members who were reluctant to approve any visible rooftop elements and others who are not so inclined. And I guess I would like to argue that moving the railing does not materially change its appearance from Clinton Street, and of course doesn't change the visibility of the bulkhead. So, as I mentioned earlier, we've already moved the railing back in discussions with LPC, and we're hoping to avoid moving back further and really reducing that deck area available to watch fireworks and the like with his family, nieces and nephews. So that concludes my presentation for the rooftop elements. I'll move to the rear, and I begin with the historic maps. There was quite a bit of discussion between me and LPC staff about whether our rear of our building was original or part of an addition. The map on the left from 1855 shows our building and the two adjacent buildings, similar size on the lot. But by 1886, you can see all three buildings have been extended. Ours for full 4 stories, as well as the one to the east. The one to the west is only 2 stories at the back, and that's the configuration I showed you earlier today. So the work of the rear, these are the existing conditions right now with our current windows at the top noted. And proposed, you can see the raised height of the building with the guardrail on top, and then we are proposing to raise the heads of those 3 windows, not change their width, but increase their height slightly. I mentioned this is not visible. This is the break through the buildings from Pacific, and if we zoom in, you'll see we're just seeing that's actually the neighboring building with the 2-story addition. So our rear yard is only 10 feet deep, and there is a taller building from Clinton Street directly behind on the lot lines. So this is me standing in the backyard with my head against the wall of the Clinton Street building. And the point is to demonstrate that this is only visible from very oblique views in this backyard and adjacent backyards. I have 2 photographs here taken from that fire escape showing the 2 windows and dashed in their proposed window heads. This is looking the other way, the neighboring building. I have one final slide, which is we are proposing also to put a window onto the side wall that's not visible from the street. So that concludes my presentation today. Thank you. There are some additional materials in the appendix that show dimensions and whatnot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Commissioner Chen?
Short of moving that top rail at the front back, is there any other alternative that you have explored, given that community board's comment and concern?
And this was actually discussed in that meeting, is eliminating its visibility completely would require us to eliminate the deck on the front part. I think it was asked why the deck is not put on the back. As you can see, there's other equipment like mechanical equipment, but also the view that my client hopes to enjoy and has done in the past walking up there is from the front of the deck. There's There's a building, several buildings down with a rooftop addition that obstructs other views when you move to the back.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilder.
Yeah, did you check to see how far it needs to go back so it's not visible? Did you do any studies?
So if I work back, you can see our, excuse me, I'll try to work back. The front skylight of those two sawtooth skylights becomes visible, barely visible in that view. And so we would have to move it back at least that far. And as I said, that would basically eliminate the deck from the front of the building.
And your railing's 42 inches or?
Yes, 42 inches.
Okay.
Commissioner Ginsburg?
You're raising the roof there, correct?
That's correct.
What is the ceiling height in the interior now?
So in the center of the roof where the two roofs come together, it's only 8 feet. We are raising it in order to both accommodate mechanical equipment and ductwork, but we are also raising the ceiling in the space itself.
Okay, if you didn't raise it, how would that affect the railing visibility?
Yeah, that I'm going to go to a view. So the roof, of course, slopes. So even though we're raising it, we're only raising it slightly above the actual slope of the roof towards the front. And bear with me while I get to it. So yeah, that's it. So there's in red is the existing roof line. And you can see, I believe it's about 11 inches that we've raised the deck above the, above the cornice line.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, let's go ahead and see if there's anybody in the room who would like to speak on this item. Noting that there isn't, let me turn it over to Stephen Thompson for remote testimony.
Those joining via Zoom who wish to speak, please raise your hand, after which you'll be promoted to panelists. We ask you to unmute yourself, state your name for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. The first speaker is Christina Conroy.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society. Now, we approve the proposed alterations to the rear facade, but the rooftop railing would be highly visible from the street. Now, we also believe that to make the railing less obtrusive, we suggest enclosing less of the roof or lowering the railing slightly. These small changes to the rooftop railing would make it significantly less noticeable and would cause less disruption to the streetscape. Thank you, Commissioners.
Anyone else wishing to speak, please raise your hand. Seeing none, I'll note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 6 recommends approval on the condition the railing facing Atlantic Avenue be set back 2 feet.
Thank you. Did you want to respond to the comments?
I will just say, I understand that there is a question, maybe subjective question about how much the railing is appropriate to see and not. Again, we've previously tried to reduce it by pushing it back some and minimizing our roof deck.
Thank you. Commissioners, are there any final questions? Okay, if not, let's go ahead and close the hearing. Commissioner Goldblum, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that? Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the hearing is closed. Commissioner Ikumbe, would you like to start this discussion?
I believe what's being presented is very straightforward. And I guess the question is, do we want the railing to be visible or not? In truth, I would say it doesn't have to be to the point that it's completely invisible from the street, but I would say it does need to be reduced slightly. How that's happened or how that comes about is up to the applicant. But yes, and I'm also fine with the raising of the rear window.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilder?
Yeah, I agree. I think I do find this much of the railing being visible is is problematic, and they should work with it so that it's a little less distracting.
Thank you, Commissioner Ginsburg.
I agree with my fellow commissioners. Some reduction in visibility would be good. I realize pulling it back loses some of the roof, but depending on what you did with the front skylight monitor of going to a walkable skylight or something else, you could make up the lost space while reducing the visibility.
Thank you, Commissioner Mahan.
I agree.
Thank you, Commissioner Chen,
Same here.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Me too.
and Commissioner Jefferson.
Install lot line window is appropriate. Alter the top floor of the facade appropriate, and the railing should be lowered.
Thank you. And I just want to note that Commissioner Chu is no longer participating remotely. So let's go ahead and read the motion. Thank you.
In the matter of LPC 26-00012, 152 Atlantic Avenue, Cobble Hill Historic District, a Greek revival style brick building built in 1848 to 52. This application is construct a rooftop bulkhead and railing, alter the top floor of the rear facade, and install a lot line window. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Cobble Hill Historic District. I note approval with modifications, finding that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the proposed slope stair bulkhead and low skylight will only be moderately visible from a limited area at the east side of Clinton Street, north of Atlantic Avenue, and the size and form of the bulkhead has been minimized so as to not call undue attention to itself, that the neutral gray finish of the railings, gray standing seam cladding at the bulkhead, and gray roofing at the skylights will allow these elements to recede from view, that the modest expansion of the parapet and enlargement of window openings at the top floor of the non-visible rear facade will maintain the rhythm of the fenestration and will not detract from this altered row, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural or historic character of the building or the historic district. However, I find that the rooftop railing will be highly visible over the front facade. Therefore, I recommend that the deck and railing be pulled back and or lowered to minimize visibility over the front facade.
Thank you. Commissioner Walder, would you second that?
Second.
Thank you. And Mark, will you call the vote?
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum,
Aye.
Commissioner Equimbe,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Commissioner Wilder. With 8 in favor and none opposed, the motion passes.
Okay, that's been approved with modifications. Please continue to work with staff. Okay, I think we are ready for lunch. So that concludes the morning session. And we're going to break now. It is 12:40, so we will return at 1:10 and resume the afternoon session. We're going to ask all members of the public on Zoom to voluntarily exit at this time so that you don't experience technical difficulties returning to the afternoon session, which can happen if we remove you from the meeting.